Annexation, November the 29th. Commissioner Smith, you give us the prayer and the pledge, please, sir.
Let's assume the attitude of prayer. Most gracious and almighty God, our Father, we come once again to say thank you for the many blessings that are bestowed upon us. Thank you, our Father, for giving us this opportunity to be servants of this community. We pray, Heavenly Father, that you will lead us and guide us tonight in this workshop, that all that we shall say and do be pleasing and acceptable in your sight. In thy Son, Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, we're going to just kind of give you the discussion. I've got 7 and then items. We'll go through them, and then if there's any public comment, we'll wait till the end. We'll start out with the annexation process by Michael Rodriguez, annexation area by Jim Hitt, Police Department Chief McKinley, Fire Department Chief Wylam, Parks and Rec Bradley Williams, Public Services Dio Udo, and kind of a final wrap up on the financial forecast, Edward Bass. So with that, Michael, you want to get us started?
All right, will do. All right, so my presentation tonight will go over the legal framework for how annexation actually takes place within the state of Florida. Annexate.
Can I interrupt for just one second? Sorry, can we kind of preface this a little bit? I know that we're here right now, but I just wanted to at least, for the people in the audience, of why we're here. I know that we're going to go right into the logistics, and thank you for that, and then all the presentation. But at least me personally, why we're here tonight is over the course of, I think, all 5 of our campaign at some point, the topic of annexation South Apopka has come up during conversation by voters, by residents of South Apopka, by people that are concerned with the community of South Apopka. And, you know, over that time, I think we've all committed to people who have brought up those concerns or those desires to speak on this in a very formal and purposeful manner. And that's really the intent of today's conversation. I think the idea of annexation has gotten legs in terms of people's interpretation of what we're actually talking about this evening. But from my personal point of view, and I welcome others to chime in, but really this is all about fact-finding. You know, it's not a heavy-fisted action by the city of Apopka to say, you will be annexed into the city of Apopka. We're not there yet. The purpose of this meeting is to understand the facts of the benefits of doing something like this, the cost of doing so, what that means to the people impacted by any decisions that we make here as a council. So that's, I wanted to give a little bit of a why we're here before we just kind of jump right into it. So at least that's from my perspective.
Thank you. Michael?
Okay. So I'd say I was going to describe the legal framework for annexation. Annexation can only really take place, well, let me start. Annexation is an authorization that's only granted by the legislature. And under Florida law, properties can be annexed by cities only as per the legislature has determined. So there are various different types of annexation that are done under the statutory framework. I'm going to go over all of them. And then at this point, the discussion can further as to which is going to be any potential or future applicable annexation for the subject area that is presented here today. So the first item, the first type of annexation is actually what's probably the most popular form of annexation in the state of Florida, and that's voluntary annexation. Voluntary annexation is prescribed by Section 171.044 Florida statutes, and it occurs when an owner or owners of real property in an unincorporated area of the county, which is contiguous to a municipality and reasonably compact, may petition the governing body of said municipality that said property be annexed to the municipality. I know that's legalese, but that is the Florida statutes language for annexation. Basically, what it comes down to is I'm an owner of a piece of property. My property abuts city property. So I'm in the county. I have a lot. One of the boundaries of my lot is on another lot. That lot falls within the city. I can then, as the property owner, petition and apply for annexation to the city. The city then must take into consideration the legal criteria for the annexing of that property. This annexation is initiated by the property owner, not by the city. That's why it's voluntary annexation. I, the property owner, have voluntarily chosen to be part of the city, to leave the county and be part of the city. So the two standards that are reviewed to determine whether a property can be voluntarily annexed into the city is that it be contiguous and compact. I did provide to you what the legal definition of contiguous is, but for the record, contiguous means that a substantial part of a boundary of the territory sought to be annexed by a municipality is coterminous with a part of the boundary of the municipality. The separation of the territory sought to be annexed from the annexing municipality by a publicly owned park, right-of-way, or for a highway, road, railroad, canal, or utility, or a body of water, watercourse, or other minor geographical division of a similar nature, running parallel with and between the territory sought to be annexed and the annexing municipality, shall not prevent annexation under this act. Plainly speak, if I own a lot, there's a canal between me and the lot on the other side. I'm in the county. The lot on the other side of the canal is in the city. I can annex. Under the law, that is determined to be contiguous. I have a lot. I've got a street. The lot on the other side of the street is in the city. I'm in the county. Under the law, I am contiguous. I can request to be annexed, and the city can then makes the determination that the property is contiguous. Then the other main factor is that it be compact. Basically, that it be one genuine, it's almost self-explanatory. Compact means concentration of a piece of property in a single area and precludes any action which would create enclaves, pockets, or finger areas in a serpentine pattern. Any annexation proceeding in any county in the state shall be designed in such a manner as to ensure the area will be reasonably compact. And that comes from section 171.031.12 Florida statutes. What that means is the general idea when it comes to annexation and counties and cities is that you don't want to create municipal boundaries that kind of look, one of the case law that's been determined, and as I speak from my own personal experience, I was involved in the late 1990s in a major annexation war between the city of Stuart and Martin County, in which the city of Stuart was, the county was in a slow growth area, and many of the property owners made a mad dash to the city of Stuart because the door was open for development in the city, which was not open in the county. The problem was that you would have one little tiny piece of property actually abuts the city. That little piece would become a linchpin to open up a grand scheme of lots that came in. So the courts have avoided, when you have annexations, to create cities that have what they call finger-like projections that stretch out. So you have a core, long line of lots, another big core, or maybe if the other best visually way to describe it is an aerial shot of Orlando International Airport with the terminal and all the air sides. The courts try to discourage cities from looking that way, and you want to have a compact form of growth so that a city is compact, contiguous, and that is the rate of development out from there. So voluntary annexation involves an application to the city. To reference the subject matter of our workshop today and to clarify any type of misconceptions that have been raised that I have seen on social media, there is no policy of the city of Apopka that properties in South Apopka today are ineligible for voluntary annexation. None. Doesn't exist. If a property owner in South Apopka has a piece of property that meets the legal criteria, and it's the statutory criteria, the city of Apopka is actually prohibited from establishing its own criteria. Under state law, only the state can determine the criteria for voluntary annexation. If a property meets that criteria and the property owner submits an application and the property is contiguous and compact and the county does not object to that annexation, the process will move forward for such a property to be voluntarily annexed. Now we have the second type of annexation, which is probably one of the discussion points that has been raised, and it will be discussed tonight, and that's annexation by a municipality. This is prescribed by Section 171.0413 Florida statutes, and that any municipality may annex contiguous, compact, unincorporated territory in the following manner. The first step is that the city will adopt an ordinance proposing to annex an area of contiguous, compact, unincorporated territory, and it shall be adopted by the city council pursuant to Section 166.041, which is the standard statutory authorization for the drafting and adoption of ordinances. Prior to the adoption of the ordinance of annexation, the city council shall hold at least 2 advertised public hearings. The first public hearing shall be on a weekday, at least 7 days after the day of the first advertisement is published. The second public hearing shall be held on a weekday at least 5 days after the day the second advertisement is published. Each such ordinance shall propose only one reasonable compact area to be annexed. However, prior to the ordinance of annexation becoming effective, a referendum annexation shall be held. And if approved by the referendum, the ordinance shall become effective 10 days after the referendum, or as otherwise provided in the ordinance, but no more than 1 year following the date of the referendum. Following the final adoption of the ordinance of annexation by the city council, the ordinance shall be submitted to a vote of the registered electors of the area proposed to be annexed. In this case, it would be South Apopka. The city council may also choose to submit the ordinance of annexation to a separate vote of the registered electors of the city. The referendum on annexation shall be called and conducted, and the expense thereof is paid by the city. The referendum on annexation shall be held at the next regularly scheduled election following the final adoption of the ordinance of annexation by the city council, or at a special election called for the purpose of holding the referendum. However, the referendum, whether held at a regularly scheduled election or at a special election, shall not be held sooner than 30 days following the final adoption of the ordinance by the city council. So the city shall publish the notice of the referendum on annexation at least once each week. So there's notice requirements for notifying the public of the referendum vote. On the day of the referendum on annexation, there shall be prominently displayed at each polling place a copy of the ordinance and a description of the property proposed to be annexed. The description shall be by metes and bounds and shall include a map clearly showing such area. And the statute gets into nitty-gritty, which means the ballot will actually, when you step into your ballot box, the ballot will clearly show a vote, and your vote is either for annexation or against annexation. So this isn't a case where a yes vote means a no or a no vote means a yes. The statute actually prescribes what the language of the ballot is to be. If the referendum is held only in the area proposed to be annexed and receives a majority vote, or if the ordinance is submitted to a separate vote of the registered voters of the annexing municipality and the area proposed to be annexed, and there is a separate majority vote for annexation in the annexing municipality and in the area proposed to be annexed, the ordinance shall become effective on the effective date prescribed therein. If there is a majority vote against annexation, the ordinance shall not become effective, and the area proposed to be annexed shall not be the subject of an annexation ordinance by the annexing municipality for a period of 2 years from the date of the referendum on annexation. This interpretation means if the vote is only put to the residents of South Apopka and a majority of those residents elect to be annexed, then the annexation ordinance becomes effective. If the vote is placed both to the residents of South Apopka and to the residents of the city of Apopka under the current corporate boundaries of the city, in order for the annexation ordinance to become effective, both groups have to vote in the affirmative for annexation. So if I believe historically the last vote, South Apopka voted against, the city of Apopka voted for, in which annexation failed. Correct me if I'm wrong. Don't hold me to that. It was before my time arriving here. So you need to have a majority vote from both groups if the election is placed to both groups, meaning the residents.
I don't mean to interrupt. Who picks, I guess, how the vote is held?
Well, how the vote is held.
In reference to if it's only the residents of South Apopka or if it's
City
both?
council. City council determines who are going to be the voters for the annexation ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
So the ordinance itself will read who are to be the electors. Okay. Now, before submitting adoption of the ordinance and to approve the annexation, the city is to prepare a report setting for the plans to provide urban services to the annexed area, and the report shall include a map or map of the city and adjacent territory showing the present and proposed municipal boundaries, the present major trunk water mains, the sewer interceptor and outfalls, the proposed extensions of such mains and outfalls, and the general land use pattern in the area to be annexed. Also, a statement certifying that the area to be annexed meets the criteria of 171043, which is the contiguous compact. A statement setting forth the plans of the city for extending to the area to be annexed each major municipal service performed within the municipality at the time of annexation. And then the statute provides for specific requirements regarding specific details within the plans. Just to brush quickly, extending urban services, the extension of municipal water and sewer services, extension of major trunk water mains and sewer mains. These have to be included in this report. Not fewer than 15 days prior to commencing the annexation procedure set forth above, city has to file a copy of this report with Orange County. Failure to timely file the report may be the basis for a cause of action invalidating the annexation. And the city shall not less than 10 days prior to the date set forth of public hearing on the annexation ordinance mail a written notice to each person who resides or owns property within the area to be annexed. That notice will describe the annexation proposal, the time and place for each public hearing to be held regarding the annexation, and the place or places within the municipality where the proposed ordinance may be inspected by the public. A copy of the notice must be kept available for public inspection during the regular business hours of the city clerk. So as you can see, the process for annexation by the city, and I don't want to call it involuntary annexation because the residents have a say one way or another. So you're not involuntary annexing. This isn't Russia annexing Crimea. Is a long drawn out process involving multiple public hearings, studies to be completed, submittals to the county, and once the ordinance is adopted, the only way the ordinance becomes effective is upon a vote of the electors, whether it's just the electors of South Apopka or the electors of both South Apopka and the city of Apopka. There is a third method for annexation. I do this as background just to clarify to the public the different types of annexation. This type of annexation is not, let me rephrase that. South Apopka is not eligible for this criteria of annexation, which is called enclave annexation. Enclave annexation is an attempt on the part of the legislature to allow cities to close off what are enclaves within its boundaries. Best way to describe an enclave is basically a hole. Just imagine Swiss cheese. And the hole in the Swiss cheese is unincorporated, completely surrounded by incorporated area. So there is a method to allow for cities to annex those enclaves. Usually it's by interlocal agreement with the county to basically close off these holes within the city. But there are specific criteria that have to be followed. It's mainly that the enclave has to be 110 acres or less, and it has to be a legal enclave. So the reason why South Apopka doesn't fall into this category is, one, it's larger than 110 acres, and two, it's actually not a legal enclave because I think on the southern end, it's still all unincorporated. South Apopka is not surrounded by the city of Apopka on all four sides. There also aren't any enclaves within the area that could fall under this criteria that would allow for an interlocal agreement between the county and the city to proceed forward with annexations in this manner. Now, practically speaking, when these enclave annexations, and I've worked on these in the past in other jurisdictions, involve various meetings with the city. Both city and the county will then have public hearings and adopt the interlocal agreement. The interlocal agreement will outline the areas of the county that are going to be annexed, so the enclaves that are going to be annexed. These agreements will also then detail the proper transfer of authority and jurisdiction of rights-of-way, and there is a specific statutory provision for the transfer of right-of-ways in which you have to follow that procedure in order for, in this case, a city right-of-way to be transferred over to, county right-of-way to be transferred over to a city. It's almost like you're deeding property from one entity to the other. So a lot of times these agreements both local governments will come to an accord as to whether, a lot of times the biggest bone of contention is that a county right-of-way or a county street is not up to the standards of the city. So one of the conditions of the agreement is that the county has to bring the roads to the city's standards before the city will agree to take them. But these agreements also go into the details of when the transfer of solid waste will go from county to city, and other utilities get transferred from county to city, but it's all there. Both parties enter into an interlocal agreement. Once that interlocal agreement is adopted by both governments, those properties are then annexed into the city, and the idea is that enclaves are closed off. There's a final fourth method, and that's an interlocal service boundary agreement. I will preface this by saying, and again, there was local media, not social media, seemed to hint at this being an option. In my discussions with Orange County, in no uncertain terms, the response back from Orange County in dealing with an interlocal service boundary agreement, or an ISBA, is, for lack of a better term, over their dead bodies. The county will not enter into, Orange County will not enter into an interlocal service boundary agreement. They will not enter one with Apopka. They will not entertain one with any city in Orange County. Basically, what I got back from them is, well, if we give you one, then we got to give one to everybody. Okay. But as for background, interlocal service boundary agreements basically outline an area that a city is going to eventually occupy. Now, we have a hybrid of that currently in effect, which is our joint planning agreement with Orange County. Whether there are methods that we can work within that joint planning agreement is a possibility, but this is still going to involve extensive negotiations between the county and the city for the proper transfer of those municipal services that are handled by the county over to the city. And this is a long, drawn-out process with two independent bodies, and there's always difficulty in bringing two bodies like the city council and the county commission together to an accord, and as well as their staffs. But interlocal service boundary agreements, there are, as was noted in the newspaper article, there are multiples in Volusia. Lake County has them as well. They outline what they allow when an ISBA allows a local government to do, and this is all within an agreement. It allows for properties to be annexed into the city, and this is the only statutory exemption. Those properties do not have to be compact and contiguous. There is a schedule and a pattern to allow for the annexation of the properties. If you want to see an example of this in action, take a look at a boundary map of the city of New Smyrna Beach. There's a large western portion and a large eastern portion, and the middle is a patchwork checkerboard of properties in the city and in the county. But there have been agreements have been set to allow for those properties to eventually become annexed. Certain agreements that have been done in the past is if over 50% of the lots on a road have agreed to be annexed, the road goes to the city. If a certain percentage of lots have annexed into the city will take over solid waste. Then there's timetables which allow for solid waste will be transferred from this county to the city on this date. There's also divvying up of responsibilities regarding building, regarding land use, zoning, and they're one of the main concerns, and I think putting my county hat on, is one of the main concerns when you're looking at a county aspect is that if there are areas where the county is going to have to provide services to an area that's actually been annexed into the city, then there is a concern that the county's MSTU funds are being used for city purposes, or that an area is falling into the city, but the county still has to provide services, and the county is not receiving MSTU funding for those. So that's one of the bone of contentions when you have between counties and cities involving ISBAs. But in regards to South Apopka, an ISBA is dead in the water because the county refuses to entertain them whatsoever. So those are the, I think that's really it. Yeah. Those are the four
Quick question on that option.
Different methods.
Without assuming what Orange County is going to do. the fourth option, is that subject to council decision only, or is that a vote of the public as well?
No, ISBAs are solely, it's like an interlocal agreement. So these are the votes of both city council and the county commission in
Okay.
order to adopt. And then if there's then a framework, and I didn't go into the details, but there is a specific framework that both bodies have to undertake towards the end result of adopting an ISBA. But
And
as I said, since the county refuses to even entertain them, it's dead in the water.
And then on two questions on the second option by ordinance. Did I hear you correctly? It's any registered voter within the geographical boundaries, or is it property owners only?
No, it's it's going to be the electors. So if you're if you're an elector, so I mean, if you own property within the city, but your voter's registration is not within that area, it's going to be who's going to be
Like if you're a
elected.
tenant in a
If you're
home
a
in that
tenant
location.
with a voter's registration card that shows you live in that precinct, then you are the voter.
Okay.
If your property owner is registered to vote elsewhere, then you don't. Landlords aren't going to come out from all over the place to come in and be eligible to vote. The way I believe that the statute is provided is that it's the eligible electors
Okay.
in the area.
And then on the enclave piece, yeah, I mean, maybe a legal definition that it doesn't meet the test. But if you look at the map, I mean, it is an enclave. I mean, there's land in the city of Apopka that are on the southern borders of South Apopka that on a map, if you were to look at it, it is pretty much surrounded.
Right, but if I have to, when it comes to enclave annexations, it's really specific to the specific enclave itself. And I'm also bound by the 110 acre
Well,
requirement.
yeah, I mean, but if,
And also, enclave annexation of undeveloped property is not permitted under the statute. The property has to be developed.
yeah, I mean, the only point that I'm making there is we made a comment that it's not surrounded. It looks like an enclave from an aerial representation if you look at it from a map. That's the only point that I was
It looks like one, but it doesn't meet the legal definition under Florida statutes to allow it to proceed this under that
Semantics,
method.
we're saying the same thing. Yep.
Any other questions for Michael?
I have just one. In reference to voluntary annexation, what is the cost for that?
Probably want to defer to Mr. Hitt as to what is our current fee. I know we just adopted the current fee for, what is the current fee for voluntary annexation?
The Jim Hay, Community Development Director. The fee is, I believe, is $2,500, and it includes the annexation, land use, and rezoning, because you have to do those two things in addition to the annexation portion.
And that's regardless of the size of the property?
Correct.
Michael, one question so if we had two votes, we had the unincorporated that wants to incorporate, and then the already incorporated, is that a lump sum vote, or is that the
No.
county has to vote in the affirmative and the city electorate has to vote in the affirmative?
I believe that the way that the statute is written, and it's not really very crystal clear, but the way I read the statute is it's two separate areas. So it's two separate votes.
So both have to be in the affirmative?
Both have to be in the
Okay.
affirmatives.
Okay.
So you don't get to tally, you don't get to add up the two and see if you've got a majority. You need two separate majority votes
Okay,
in order for the annexation ordinance to be adopted.
okay, all right.
And that's providing the council wants the municipality to vote.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right, Mr. Hitt.
So when we got started with this, fortunately, Lake County, or Orange County, has a lot of good data that was available in order to create the PowerPoint for this. The original, we had to start at one point was creating a location where we were going to consider south of Apopka for the annexation. So I did come up with this map, sent it to Orange County, and then Orange County did create a lot of the data, well, just about all the data that you'll be seeing as part of this presentation. But basically, we're looking at 451 on the eastern side, 10th Street on the north side with a little bit of a jog on the north side. And then Sheila Road is kind of the eastern boundary, and then that goes down to Keene Road on the south side. So there's a lot of different areas. There are a lot of little compact enclave areas as part of this whole area.
And Mr. Head, this is the exact view that I was talking about.
Yes.
That proves that the location is an enclave. I mean, we can talk semantics to say, oh, there's strips that are county or what have you, but when you see yellow surrounding all the white areas,
Right.
that to me definitionally meets kind of my smell test when we're talking about an enclave.
Correct, but the overall is still over 110 acres.
Yeah, but
But it's an
again,
enclave, yes.
yeah, I'm agreeing that option 3 definitionally by a legal standard is not an option that's on the table. But I'm just saying, when you look at that optics wise, and the majority of the people that are going to be looking at this are lay people like myself, not expert in what this is, but visually speaking, that looks like an enclave to me.
It's surrounded.
Right.
So Orange County, fortunately, like I mentioned, they did take the original map. They defined it a little bit more accurately and came up with a little over 2,400 acres in the outlined area. Overall, though, there are 2,340 parcels and a little over 1,000 acres that are unincorporated within that this defined blue area. So they defined it down a little bit farther. So within that area, this is again the orange area. The residential properties, there are 2,185 that are classified as residential, which total 714 acres. Of that, there are 1,036 that have homestead exemptions on their property. That's a total, basically it's a total of about $50,000 that comes off the top of the assessed value. And that resulting amount is the taxable value for the millage rates and the fire, the police, any other taxes that are assessed on different properties. And that's approximately 47% of those that have the homestead exemptions on those. You can see it's a nice patchwork. This portion here just shows how many units are on each of the parcels. Some of the darker units, obviously, those are the apartment complexes, or actually over on Martin Road, that's an affordable housing section that's in the county. And that portion that's on the far eastern side, that's actually it's a retirement community. So the residential breakdown, there's 2,185 built units and there's 385 vacant residential lots. The taxable value on all of this is $213 million. That's the taxable value, and the assessed taxes, overall taxes, are $3.5 million, and that includes all of the taxes, not just the millage rate that the city or the county has. It's the MSBU's also. So there's a total of 66% total acreage with 95% taxable value in the area. And then you can see the chart below shows the market, the assessed, and then the actual taxable value. Market rate, this is one of those items that's kind of a misnomer. You know, you think market rate, that's what you can sell the property for. Usually it's about twice that, the actual market rate. It's a formula that just about every property appraiser uses, but it's, again, this is it's a misnomer in regards to what the actual value is for the property that you could sell it for. But again, Overall taxable value for 2021 was about 3.5 million. Commercial and industrial property, there's not a lot down there. It's 84 acres total. It's only 7.6 of the current undeveloped properties is currently undeveloped, and there's 9 properties, which are 6.4 acres. Combined, it's only 3% of the total taxable value of the property. I'll show you this in a
Now, would that,
Yeah.
would that represent all non-residential property? Is that the balance?
This is just the commercial and industrial properties in terms of the land use.
So what am I missing? So we've got residential, you've got commercial industrial up here. What else am I missing?
Office?
There's more slides with agriculture and governmental.
Like churches and things like that, what would that be
That's coming
classified
up.
as?
That's
Okay.
coming up.
Okay, gotcha.
There's a little over 1,000 parcels or acres, and 84 of that is
Okay.
industrial. Yeah, that's all in here.
Okay.
They did
Sorry.
a very thorough
Sorry.
job. I truly appreciate
get
what
ahead.
Orange County can do. This is just the industry sector, different types of businesses that are available or that are within that. Agriculture and forestry, fishing, hunting sector, that's in that southeast or southwestern area. Costa Farms and Dewar Nurseries are the main ones.
This is, what am I reading on the screen? It says employment. So
This is there's an industry book that talks about, these are the different classifications that have industrial type of properties. It's not industrial, but just something other than residential and commercial. These are the different industry
SIC
professions.
codes, SIC codes.
yeah, I'm familiar with the SIC codes, but I'm just trying to calibrate what I'm reading on the screen. So take the very first line, ag, forestry, fishing, and hunting. Does that mean that there's 1,500 entities doing that type of business within
Correct.
South Apopka?
Correct.
Really?
Yep, that's what the data says.
Interesting. Seems like a lot.
Is that just jobs? Is that total jobs that are?
I'm sorry, jobs, yes, in each of those industries.
So if you look bottom right, it says 2,200 total jobs. Out of those 2,200 total jobs, 1,500 of those are ag.
Okay. Got it.
So for the land use itself, this is a breakdown of, again, the commercial and industrial properties. We're looking at a little over $130,000 of taxes that are generated from the commercial and industrial. Compared to the residential portion, it's like a drop in the bucket. And again, that's overall taxes. This is just a difference between the Orange County taxes, the unincorporated and incorporated. The city of Apopka for a number of years was, the overall tax rate was actually lower than what it was in the county. Over the course of the last 10, 15 years or so, the millage rate is 0.1396 mils higher as the total taxes for a piece of property.
So you say the total millage is 0.1396.
Correct. That's including all of the taxes that are generated. In Orange County, you've got the Orange County Fire, and then the taxing district, which is typically used to be considered the sheriff. Those two taxes in themselves, it's about 20% of the total tax breakdown. When you annex into the city, those two are taken off, and the city tax is added on, which is 21%. So there's, because our police and fire taxes are covered in our millage.
Right. So convert the 0.1369 into dollars for me.
I'd have to get, anybody got a calculator? It's based on,
$13, $14 per thousand.
yeah.
So in the grand scheme of things, we're pretty flat.
Yes,
It's the same thing. The county and the city are the same.
correct, yep.
I mean, we're talking 13th of a mil.
Yeah, it's a very,
It's the same thing. I mean, we can sit here and split hairs, but it's the same effective tax rate.
correct. For agricultural operations, this is the one that was Costa Farms and Dewar Nurseries. This is the overall taxes for that type of agricultural operations, and there's a few little ones here and there, but the overall taxes is $7,800. Agriculture does not pay a lot of taxes. Institutional, this is where you get into the religious or government. So these are the little blocks there. It's total, the total area is 224 acres, is characterized by that, which is about 1% of the total taxable value that's in there. Most of the properties that are religious or governmental, they're not taxable anyway. So we don't get any taxes out of those entities.
But in terms of consideration of those entities, from an institutional standpoint, like county has the Bridges Center. What other ones am I not thinking of that would be county that would be fairly material as it relates to this? Wheatley Park, okay. Wheatley Park.
Yeah, any of the schools, in this case.
Well, schools would
Wheatley.
be separate, right? So it's Wheatley Park's a county park, right? So
Yes.
then Bridges.
Bridges
then
Center, correct.
And then I would say the rest would be probably utility considerations, things like that.
Utilities, but also churches.
Yeah, church.
These are all
I'm thinking
churches.
strictly from a government perspective.
Oh, sure, I'm
from
sorry.
a county interest.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, got it.
And let's see this one. Okay, 63 parcels are considered a government institutional. This includes the stormwater management areas, conservation areas, and utility tracts. So there's a lot of smaller areas, but a lot of that ends up being the stormwater management areas that are basically basins, stormwater ponds, things like that. That also includes some of the properties that the state has next to the 414. Acreage versus its taxable values. This is one of those that we were alluding to all along. With the predominantly residential, there's 2,185 units. It represents 66% of the annexation area, but 95% of the taxable value. So the overall taxes that are generated from the residential portion, that's about $3.5 million for the overall taxes. Lion's share. And that's what we have for this portion. And a lot of this can be related back to the following presentations also.
Okay, any questions for Jim? The one I've got, I want to make sure, Edward, on your final analysis, you pulled out the MSBU's because that's just basically transferring dollars
Correct, Mayor.
as far as the tax
Right.
revenue.
Mine,
Okay.
right. I
Yep.
will-
Okay, that's, I want to make sure. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I mean, the only question I think Mr. Rodriguez answered, obviously this isn't just a residential conversation. It equally impacts businesses because if they were to annex in the city, obviously there's impact fee considerations, other costs of coming into the city, correct?
No,
I don't think there's going to be any additional impact fee questions unless they're going to actually do any construction or
Any upgrades or anything
any
we would have to
upgrades,
pay, but
which
that
So
would
they
be
don't,
normal.
even if like a business entity is existing now, came into the city, they wouldn't have to do like
Business
fire
tax
impact
receipts.
or
Business
police
tax
impact,
receipts.
no impact fees.
No,
What, on a residential basis, is that the same?
same.
But they would have to connect into water or sewer if that were the case.
They do not have to connect unless they are legally required to by the state. And those are purposes for environmental typically.
Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself again. Sorry, this is probably more Deodat kind of.
perhaps the biggest
questions,
change is some of the businesses will then, once annexed in, will have to pay a City of Apopka BTR in addition to an Orange County BTR.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first, going back to the original conversation around who actually votes to make the ultimate decision, because my thinking was is if the businesses do have to pay impact fees, things like that, could be a very punitive decision to them if the residents or landowners within that area decide to annex and they have no say in the matter. So I wanted to get that clarification.
But I think,
Okay,
I
that's
think it'd be
fine.
clear if you've got a business who's going to undertake new construction, they'll be eligible. They'll be paying county impact fees instead of city impact fees. They're situated. They're not going to automatically. You're entering the city. You got to catch up and pay us impact fees. Impact fees are usually due upon any type of construction when building permits are issued. So a business owner, if they're going to do any building, If there's no annexation, they're going to pay those fees to the county. If the annexation goes forward, then they'll pay them to the city. Either way, it's not a fee that a property owner, a business owner will not pay. They're going to pay it one way or another, to either the county or to the city. But there isn't a automatic, hey, it's time for you guys to catch up and pay up for all these fees now that you're in the city.
Got it. And we don't have any data around, because I did a couple spot checks before this meeting, and percentage-wise, it's almost spot on, 48% of owner-occupied status. The people of those owner-occupied properties, is it fairly, do we know, how many owners that is? Meaning,
That's probably the
is there
45%.
property owners that own multiple interests in South Apopka versus it being
that
of
part
the
we
other
wouldn't-
53%, or of that 47%, sorry, of the 53%, is that a lot of variety of the different landowners of that property?
We don't know. If they don't have the homestead exemption, we could have multiple property owners. The same property owner might own, 5 properties, it might own just one. But we didn't go into it that far. But again, if there's a residential, a resident on that, whether it's rented or whether it's owned, if they're a registered voter, they can vote still.
Okay.
So, Jim, one last on the BTR, the county rate, is the county rate the same regardless of if they're in the city, or do they get a discount if they're in the city? Is there a
They're the same.
discount? Huh?
They're the same. I mean, if they're in the city, the rate in the county, I believe, is the same.
You don't think it's discounted if they're paying city and the county?
I don't believe there's any
Can you
discount for
just
it.
verify that?
I'll find
Just-
out about
Not
that.
it's a big number, but it would be.
Yeah, we'll find out that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I have one last question. So according to the data that you presented, I would presume that half of the acreage we're talking about incorporating is vacant land. Would that be a fair assumption?
Sorry, just take my glasses off that I can see.
I don't think, I think it was
There's
half.
1,082 acres. And the residential portion is 714 of the 1,082.
And then if you went back to your stat of the 2185 residential units, it was it 387 or 687 that was that were vacant?
Yeah,
It was on your slide. It was like the third. or
yeah,
fourth
it was
slide.
on there.
387.
387.
Okay. So
No, I don't think it's near 50%.
387 divided by.
Well, when I look at it, it says that the boundary that we're talking about annexing is 2,408 acres.
That's the boundary. The actual acreage of the unincorporated area is 1,082
There's some pieces
acres.
that are in that.
That's just the blue area. The blue line, that was the original map that I had put up in the big
Correct.
yellow one. That was just the defined area. And then the actual acreage of the unincorporated portion, that's the 1,082.
Yeah, there it is. It's 171 acres is vacant.
Yeah.
Right here on page 13, page 13.
I can put the slides back
It says
up. with
includes
that.
387 vacant parcels, 171 acres.
Everybody good presentation?
So out of the 21, so it's less than 10%, like
have a handout?
7 or 8%.
I've got
I
these,
didn't get a handout.
but they're small. I just did that for mine.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Yes, I always ask for a printout.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
You know me.
I'll send
I
it to
always
you.
ask for a printout.
You got it there, Commissioner?
Yeah, I see the 387 vacant residential lots.
Right, and then right next to, in parentheses, 171 acres. But you don't have that?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, look. So maybe that was an updated 171 acres. So about 7 or 8%.
Take mine, because I'm using this. Here.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
All right, Chief.
Go ahead. Because I'm using this.
Yeah, I'll plug mine in.
Mayor, Commissioners. Good evening. As we do our presentation, we've made this presentation about community annexation, not just about South Apopka annexation, because it really is going to apply to any large built-out area surrounding the city of Apopka, not just South Apopka. We'll address the challenges we currently face and how those challenges will be affected by any large annexation of any existing built-out community. Each year, we plan a budget for the growth that is intended for the city to ensure we will have the resources available to provide proper law enforcement services to our existing community and the planned development. The annexation of any large built-out community will also take significant planning and additional resources to ensure we're able to meet the needs of our current, planned, and proposed annexed community. Excuse me. Without proper long-term strategic planning and budget preparation, all these communities could see an immediate and significant decrease in law enforcement service. The Apopka Police Department prides itself on the level of service we provide to our community, and we find ourselves struggling to maintain that level of service due to the present lack of law enforcement applicants. Before we can look at the annexation of any large built-out community that will immediately require law enforcement services, we must look at how we are servicing our current community and what it will take to continue to provide our current level of service to our existing residents and our planned development. This is the same slide you saw during our budget presentation. This chart shows the ratio of officers per 1,000 residents for many of the local law enforcement agencies. The state per capita average for police departments dropped from 2.43 officers per 1,000 residents in 2020 to 2.33 officers per 1,000 in 2021, and the local average of agencies is listed at 2.39. Due to the city's growth in 2021, the Apopka Police Department fell from a per capita of 2.09 in 2021 to 2.08 in 2022. As the graph shows, we continue to be below the state and local average of officers per 1,000 residents. With the vacancies we currently have within the police department, our actual capita ratio is currently 1.83 officers per 1,000 residents. Again, this is a slide that you saw during our budget presentation. This slide shows how many officers each of the listed cities has per square mile of service area. As you can see from the slide, not only do we have one of the lowest per capitas in the area, we also have one of the lowest officers per square mile ratios among the agencies listed. Currently, the police department has authorized 122 sworn positions. However, if we intend to maintain the same level of service or improve it as the city continues to grow, we have to improve our per capita and officer per square mile ratios to be closer aligned with the state average and that of the surrounding agencies. In order to attain the state per capita average of 2.33 officers per 1,000 residents, our authorized sworn positions should be approximately 136 sworn police officers. This number of 136 authorized sworn positions is not just based off of our per capita, but is supported by the number of officers per square mile in the surrounding jurisdiction. It was also confirmed by the independent staff study conducted by the Center for Public Safety during the Public Safety Building Needs Assessment. Based on these numbers, the police department currently needs an additional 14 sworn positions. Although this is not about cost for us, it is important to keep in mind as we plan for the future. Even if you gave us the funding for these additional officers, we will struggle to find the applicants at this current time. As you will recall, we did not request additional officers in this year's budget due to the need to fill the 15 vacancies we currently have. Just as a note, I want to point out that there's discrepancy in the price of the patrol vehicles from our budget proposal to this slide. Since the budget was approved, the cost of the vehicles on the state contract has gone up by $8,000. Now, that's a significant hit to our budget. We are going to stay within budget, though, I promise you. As presented during the budget hearings, there are currently 9,900 dwelling units planned or under construction in the city of Apopka. This is up from 7,270 dwelling units planned or under construction last year and 5,777 the year before. Based on the city's community development unit, in April 2021, the average household had 2.79 persons living in it. This residential growth will add an estimated 27,621 residents to the city of Apopka over the next several years. This is up from an estimated 21,000 just last year. In addition to the residential growth, there is approximately 14 million square foot of industrial and commercial growth planned or under construction. This is up from an estimated 11 million last year. The city continues to modify the future land use within the city and allow for rezoning that permits denser growth. As a result, we are experiencing an increase in apartment complexes and townhomes, which create a large density. All of this growth is going to continue to tax the already limited resources of the Apopka Police Department if not planned for appropriately. As this growth occurs, the 27,000 new residents will require an additional 56 police officers just to maintain our current per capita of 2.08 officers per 1,000 residents, which is below the state average of 2.33 officers per 1,000 residents. If we were to try to attain the state average of 2.33 officers per 1,000 residents, we would need an additional 63 authorized police positions. The cost of the additional 56 officers would be approximately $8.7 million, and the 63 officers would be approximately $9.8 million. If the cost of the additional 56 officers is averaged out over the next 5 years, as we know that those 9,900 homes are not going to be built tomorrow, it would cost approximately $1.7 million per year at today's cost. The timing of this growth is unknown. However, at this time, growth across the city is happening very rapidly. The cost does not include support personnel such as dispatchers, records clerks, etc., that would be needed over the next 5 years to accommodate this growth. It is important to note that these numbers are what we know as of right now. The planned and future growth of the city will continue to increase, and our needs will be even greater. Every budget year, we come to you with adjustments to our numbers due to the increase in homes under construction or planned. And although this trend may slow down due to the current economy, I don't believe any of us see this trend stopping. Based on the boundaries provided for the area to be annexed, the Orange County Planning Department estimates the area covers 1,082 acres or approximately 1.69 square miles. The city of Apopka currently covers approximately 35.5 square miles. In fiscal year 21-22, the Apopka Police Department responded to 84,000 calls for service, which breaks down to approximately 7,000 calls for service per month or 2,378 calls for service per square mile. In 2021, the Orange County Sheriff's Office responded to 7,600 calls for service in the proposed annexation area of approximately 1.69 square miles. In 2022, the Sheriff's Office is on pace to answer 8,900 calls for service in this area, or approximately 745 calls for service per month, or 5,291 calls for service per square mile. That's almost double what we handle in the city currently. Annexing South Apopka would result in an approximate increase in calls for service of 10.59%. It is important to note that in addition to these numbers, we are currently seeing our crime numbers increase and returning to pre-pandemic numbers. Crime is up this year as it is across the country as we slowly return back to our pre-pandemic routines. According to the Orange County Planning Division, within the area to be annexed, there are 2,185 built residential units or 387 vacant residential lots. According to the City of Apopka Community Development Department in 2022, there was an average of 2.72 persons per household in the City of Apopka. Based on these numbers, the proposed annexation would incorporate approximately 5,900 new residents into the city. To maintain our current per capita of 2.08 officers per 1,000 residents, we would need an additional 12 police officers at a cost of $1.8 million to cover the annexed area. If we want to achieve the state average of 2.33 officers per 1,000 residents, we would need an additional 14 police officers at a cost of $2.1 million. If we annex the area under consideration without first putting these resources in place, our per capita would drop from 2.08 to 1.89 officers per 1,000 residents. These costs are just for sworn officers and do not account for the additional civilian support staff that will be needed as the agency grows. With regard to the 2,185 built residential units, these include an apartment complex, an assisted living home, and some rooming houses, which most likely increase the density above the 2.72 residents per household. So the actual number of citizens residing in this area may be more than the estimated 5,900. The 387 vacant lots within the proposed annexation area in size and vary in size and could be built out with higher density designations. In addition to the police officers needed to patrol the proposed annexation, there is an elementary school, Phyllis Wheatley, that would require an SRO to be assigned to it. This increases the number of officers needed to a minimum of 15. Any attempt to annex a large community around the city of Apopka would require several years of significant planning to ensure we could meet the needs of our current and planned communities, as well as a community being annexed into the city. We need to ensure that we can provide the residents of the annexed properties with the same level of law enforcement service we provide to our current residents, while also ensuring we do not decrease the level of service we provide to our existing residents as a result of the annexation. Although we are making progress in filling our current vacancies, we currently have 15 authorized positions to fill. In addition to the 15 vacancies, if we want to achieve the state average per capita of 2.33 officers per 1,000 residents, we need an additional 14 authorized sworn positions. Hiring 29 officers in today's market is going to be challenging. We just recently learned that 3 equivalent of training classes, those are classes that are offered to out-of-state police officers to come to the state of Florida. They just have to do a crossover. They don't have to do the full academy. Were canceled due to lack of registered students. As you all know, the governor is providing law enforcement officers to move from other states to the state of Florida. Actually, it was expanded to anybody that becomes a police officer in the state of Florida, $5,000 plus an additional $1,600 to pay the federal income tax on that $5,000. We hired a couple people from outside, but then the cities up to the north and northwest, or northeast, I'm sorry, began increasing their salaries by $10,000 and $30,000 to keep them in their cities. We should not annex any large area with a current residential population without first having the resources in place to cover the annexed area. Not having the resources in place prior to the annexation would cause a decrease in law enforcement services for our current residents and those residing in the area being annexed. During this presentation, we have only addressed sworn police officers. I've mentioned this a couple times, but we require hiring civilian support staff, CID support staff, communications technicians, records clerk, and probably an additional code enforcement officer. Based on the information provided, if we were to annex the residents of South Apopka without a long-term strategic plan in place, I do not believe we can provide the residents of South Apopka with the same level of law enforcement service they currently receive. Our current communication center is built out. We don't have room to add many more staff until we complete the new public safety building. We also lack the space in our current building to house more sworn personnel. This does not mean that we cannot provide services in the future if properly planned for. However, it will take several years for us to be able to provide South Apopka with adequate law enforcement services while ensuring we continue to provide the same level of service to our current citizens. As discussed during this presentation, the current and future law enforcement needs of the police department that should be considered are the new public safety building at $56,500, 14 additional police officers to meet the state per capita average of
That's
$2
cheap,
million.
Chief. I want to.
I'm sorry?
Approve that budget right now.
What did I say? I'm sorry.
You said
No,
56,000.
56 million, I'm sorry. I'm sure we'd already have it under, break ground on it was 56,000. 56 million, 14 additional police officers at 2 million. Cost for officers to cover current and planned growth is 63 officers over the next 5 to 10 years at $9.8 million. To provide the residents of the area proposed to be annexed with a state average of 2.3 officers per 1,000 residents, we would need an additional 14 officers at $2.1 million. We have not discussed crime during this presentation because this is not about crime. You give us the resources and we'll do our job. That's the bottom line when it comes to crime, so I'm not concerned about the crime. There are a significant number of calls for service that will tax our resources, but with the proper resources, we can handle that also. This is about providing the residents in the proposed annexed area with the same level or better level of law enforcement services that they currently have to ensure we can maintain or improve their quality of life. We must also keep in mind that inadequate law enforcement staffing is not only unsafe for the community we serve, but is also very hazardous for our sworn personnel. We must ensure they have the proper resources to address calls for service in a safe manner for the community and our officers. Unfortunately, if a vote was held today, we could not provide our current residents or those in the proposed annexation area with the same level of service they currently receive. As mentioned, we have not discussed the type of crime that occurs in the proposed annex area because this is not about the crime. With the proper resources, as I mentioned, we will handle the crime. Can we do this? Absolutely, we can. We can accomplish large annexations of surrounding built-out areas. However, it is going to take strategic planning and preparation to accomplish. First, we have to ensure the current level of service we provide our existing residents is at least equal to the state and local average of officers per 1,000 and officers per square mile. We need to make certain our staffing levels at all times safeguard the well-being of our police officers. We also need to ensure we properly prepare for the currently approved and planned growth the city is experiencing. Finally, we need to have the resources in place prior to the annexation of any large populated area to ensure we can immediately provide them with at least the same level of service they are currently receiving. And with that, I'll answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Chief McKinley?
Let me just finally put my, I mean, at this stage, at this level, we've been understaffed with the police department for about 10 years. Am I correct in saying that? Because I've been here since 2014 and we've never reached that level of where we had enough patrol officers,
I've been here 7.5
enough police
years,
personnel.
and we've never met the state per capita average. Since I've been here, we haven't met the local average. We've chased it. Some of the budgets, we've gotten personnel, other budgets we haven't. If you remember, we got a COPS grant for 10 officers one year. I think it was in 2016 roughly. We've applied for COPS grants since then. We haven't gotten any of them. But we have been chasing the per capita. I think our salary increase that you gave us, that the commission gave us for this fiscal year is helping recruit. We've hired people. We've lost a couple too. We just lost one to the U.S. Marshals. He wants going to go to New York to be a U.S. Marshal, and that's his dream, and that's good for him. Wish him the best. But we continue to try to fill that, but we've never had the authorized positions that would allow us to reach the per capita average.
Mr. Becker?
Yeah, can you go back 2 slides, I think it was?
Probably not. I'll do my best.
2 slides
I
was
think,
the current.
Rob gave me instructions on how to run this thing before I got up
Is that
here.
the current?
well,
approved
I think
growth?
you encapsulate my thinking on the matter of law enforcement and that third bullet to a T, right? This is about providing the residents in the proposed annex area with the same level or better level of law enforcement services that they currently have to ensure we maintain or improve their quality of life. I think that encapsulates why we're here tonight in totality, not just for law enforcement. Certainly there's budget deficiencies in terms of getting you properly staffed. That's a separate topic, I think. And I certainly agree with you in terms of getting the right amount of personnel within your department so that you can service and pull through if this were to go to a vote and get approved on that third bullet. What, I guess, highest level question would be, do you feel that, again, I always like to go into this euphoric world of you have all the money that you need and all the people that you need. Assuming that were the case, do you think that City of Apopka patrolling and providing law enforcement services to that area will be a marked improvement versus what Orange County can provide? And I know that's a loaded question and it comes with politics and all that sort of thing.
It's a very loaded question since I've worked for both.
But at the end of the day, if that were to happen,
We have the potential.
what would the community expect from City of Apopka Police versus Orange County Sheriff?
With the proper resources, we have the potential to provide them, all cities should have the potential to provide their residents with a better per capita coverage and better services. And I say that because your sheriff's offices are somewhere around 1.68 per 1,000, but majority of your counties have a lot of rural area that's not patrolled. So the per capita of a police department is always higher because your population and your density is higher. So given the proper resources, and it's going to take some resources, you've heard me say this numerous times, 97% of the people in South Apopka are great people. They want to go to work, they want to work hard, they just want to live their life. About 3% of the population ruins South Apopka. We know who those 3% are. The sheriff's office know who those 3% are. We work with them closely to make sure we have a good level of service. The sheriff's office is has additional funding to patrol south of Apopka through, I think it's a neighborhood block grant or something to that effect. And so off-duty deputies patrol that area to help their per capita in that area and to deal with the calls for service that they have. You give me the resources and we'll do it. I'm not worried about the money. You all tell me we're going to do it, you're going to have to give me the money. You know, that's on y'all.
Because I mean, unfortunately, in the 6 years that I've been on this council, the times that I hear the most about the annexation conversation or law enforcement in general is, you know, unfortunately during times of violent crime. And the community comes together and has sessions to talk about what can we do as a community come together and prevent these sort of things going forward. And a lot of times it's just not an adversarial relationship with law enforcement. It's we want more. We want more community policing and more community involvement from the agencies that provide that service to us. And, you know, again, you always get the best service the closest to home. And, you know, I just wanted to see if that's your same sentiment of, you know, if you were properly staffed and had the proper resources, that level of service would go up and eventually crime goes down.
I mean, we have some additional things to look at. As I mentioned, this does not cover civilian staff personnel. Our communication center would be pretty strapped. We'd have to move them, probably half of them back over to the emergency operations center to operate until we got the new building. We are, you know, sort of hamstrung because of the police department and its current situation, but we're working on that. That's a couple years down the road and we'll have that resolved. We need to look at, I need to delve a little bit further into the exact crime. I know that South Apopka's had approximately 3 homicides this year. Those are long-term investigations in most cases. They do have a lot of drive-by shootings. They come on into ours. Many of y'all don't hear about the drive-by shootings because, you know, they miss each other, fortunately, by the grace of God. And but we deal with that. Can we do it? Absolutely. I can provide them with whatever level of service you all allow me to provide them with.
And I'm going to pressure test some of the thinking here. I mean, that's the point of a workshop, right? Is to play both sides and really kind of get to the best outcome.
My
Because,
biggest
you know,
concern-
eventually, because like your one slide said, 10.59% in call increase volume day one, as soon as, if that were that.
We cannot
would
do
be
this
switched.
without those minimum of 15 police officers on board when you throw the switch. Period.
Yeah, I will stipulate to that. But what I'm saying is that if you look at the area in focus right now, it's a 10.59% increase in call volume.
Yes, sir.
But again, my hypothesis is if you properly staff and you properly patrol, that volume either plateaus or in an ideal state, it goes down, it tapers off, it gets lower because you're
If our state
providing
attorney would
better
keep
service.
people in jail, it'd probably go down.
Yeah.
That's another problem.
You mentioned the word, and I agree. From a code enforcement perspective, again, just T-shirt size. I know it's anecdotal at best, but in terms of most, a lot, very few residential units or just dwelling or units in general in the target area, how many would be subject to code enforcement like day one if they were coming into the city?
Well, I mean, I don't know, you know, and a lot of those homes down there are rental homes. So it's going to come back on the landlord, and it becomes a double-edged sword because you hit the landlord with code enforcement fines. Guess what the rent's going to do? The rent's going to go up.
Right.
You know, so it's a double-edged sword. But again, as our community, and we have a great community here, there might be opportunities for our community and our businesses in our community to go down there and help some of those residents that are, I know they do a lot of it in the county already. You know, we try to help the residents, and it's from a law enforcement perspective. We have a great working relationship with the sheriff's office, and we'll continue that whether we annex it, we don't annex it. They support us, we support them when we need assistance.
Yeah, and I don't say that in a bad way, but it's more from a planning perspective. If we know going into it, there's going to be a lot of situations where there's going to be a lot of dialogue between your staff from a code enforcement perspective and folks that have recently annexed to the city. We want to plan for that before we have, you know, adversarial type of encounters there. And then my last question, you know, obviously we've talked significantly about officer costs, but would you think that there's any other specific capital requirements or any other budgetary needs that particular area would warrant, or is it basically it's officers as your primary concern?
You know, it's obviously we have to have a space to house the officers, and again, we're working on that with the new public safety building. One of the things I did leave out that I think we've discussed in the past is we are going to have to look at a substation up to the north of the city. up around the Kelly Park Crossing area before long, so we can put resources up into that area on a permanent basis. Our CRA area, which is part of South Apopka, as you know, accounts for 19% of our crime. So most of our officers spend their time right here in the downtown area of Apopka. But again, we can do it. I can't, my biggest concern right now is if you told me you were giving me all the money and I could hire 14 officers tomorrow, I'm 15 down, I technically need 29. I need an additional 14 to get our per capita up to what it really needs to be. The applicants aren't out there. We have, I think, 3 academies going on right now. Majority of the people in the academies are already spoken for. We're out beating the bushes. We're traveling the entire state, as we mentioned during our budget presentation, to find applicants. We are working with the HBCUs to try to make sure that we recruit minorities in this. We've got, I think they're holding a job fair at, I'm going to get this backwards. I think it was at Bethune-Cookman last year, so it's at A&M, I think, this year. So I might have it backwards. Either way, I think that's next week. So we're out sending, I had 1 recruiter. I have 4 now. I'm sending some of our younger police officers to try to connect with this younger generation to bring them into the police department and tout what our benefits are that y'all have provided us with. I've looked at the contracts for the sheriff's office and OPD and some of the other surrounding areas that are 3-year contracts, and we mentioned this during our budget presentation, but we're going to chase salaries for the next couple of years too, try to remain competitive so that we can fill these positions. We have a lot of work, and unfortunately, I think I'll go to Commissioner Velasquez's home state. I think next year the NYPD has 3,700 people retiring, just leaving. Already given them notice, they're leaving. That's in addition to their current vacancies. It's a struggle for everybody right now.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
Well, we don't want to paint this as a dark picture, and I agree with the work that you've done. And we're not going to vote tonight to annex, as we said, that it needs to be a planned process. So I guess I just have trouble with that we are focusing on making sure that we are able to accommodate future residents, but we're kind of putting our current residents on the back burner that have been here and that have given their blood, sweat, and tears to help this community to become what it is. And so I feel that they need the same consideration as future residents do. Just as we need to build a substation in Kelly Park, we need to build one in South Apopka as well. So the same consideration needs to be considered both ways.
We will have the
we
public
don't
safety
want-
building will be in South Apopka. So
Okay, so we don't want to outplan for our future residents and leave our current residents outside of that box.
and if I painted a doom and gloom picture, I apologize, because that's my goal. I'll be happy to annex South Apopka with the proper resources and everything else. We need to do it strategically so that we can provide them and make sure they have the same level of resources. I have to deal with, and apologize for saying this, y'all's decisions. And your decisions are to annex and build more homes. I have to look for that. I have to look for your annexed area, and I have to look at our current population. I have to look at this whole thing holistically, not just our new growth, our current growth, and annexation. I'm presenting you the whole picture. That's all I'm trying to do up here, Commissioners, let you see the entire picture. If you have a way to stop development so we can concentrate on South Apopka, that's fine with me. But we don't have that. Right now, we have planned 9,900 homes under construction or already planned that I have to plan for. I'd be remiss in trying to provide public safety to anybody.
So then maybe we need to consider not approving any more growth at this point until we're able to take care of our current residents and the future growth that's already planned. And we'll give you the money you need to do that.
That decision is not in my purview, sir.
Okay.
I will do and protect what you all ask me to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chief, one question. I know that you've got the numbers for the Orange County, but also that neighborhood block grant. Can you can you get a better number of how many officers they have in the annexational part? Adding those, I know those are like off-duty officers coming in. Is there a way to quantify that number as well?
Well, it's hard to tell you what their per capita is because the area that encompasses South Apopka is a zone. So they may have 2 or 3 officers riding that zone from patrol purposes, plus 1 or 2. It's my understanding they do have problems on occasion filling those off-duty because under the grant, it's probably the minimum off-duty when you can go to the city of Orlando like our officers do and work an off-duty job for significantly more. But I can find out what the grant is and what the stipulation or the,
Well, I was just trying to see if
requirements.
we could come up with a number. I know it's not,
I think it's going to vary. It's going to vary on what their patrol resources are for a given day.
right.
What the grant authorizes and everything else, just like ours. Some days we have, 8 people out on midnight shifts. Some days we have a full recourse of 10.
Right. Okay, all right, thank you. All right, Chief Wylam.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, members of the public. Here tonight to present on the South Apopka annexation for the fire department. Again, like Chief McKinley was speaking about, we're going to go over some of our current numbers. You can see our numbers over the past 5 years. We're trending upwards with the pandemic. They did drop a little bit, but we are trending back in the norm realm as far as responses. Last year, 2021, we ran 9,194 total responses. That's calls for service, again, for 2021, 9,100 incidents for the city block. Currently, we grabbed the numbers for last month, ending last month for the current year. We're up to 9,800 incidences, so we're definitely trending our way up as far as responses. Local fire department ratio per 1,000 with the additional 18 firefighters we are adding this year, which again, we're very optimistic. We're just had 17 come in today for fitting and sizing. So we're about 6 short of where our goal is going to be, and we are going to meet it, I promise you, for this next year. So our per capita now is up to 2.3 per 1,000 in the city area. And we also have to remember, we also have our contract area, which we're going to get into in a minute. And that ratio for us for that is 2.11. Compared to other municipalities in the area, Ocoee is 1.41, Winter Garden 1.45, Maitland 2.26, Winter Park 2.46, Orange County 1.63, and Orlando 1.82. Again, our current municipal limits of the city, 35.5 square miles. Remember, we're slightly different from the police department because we do contract and cover Station 29 for Orange County, which is an additional area. So our total area we cover with the fire department is 65.19 square miles. That's a population density of 1,616 residents per mile in the city itself and 957 within the contract area. Again, that is a holistic view of the city. When you look at certain parcels of certain areas, it'll be a lot more dense than others. The area to be annexed is approximately 1.69 square miles, as Chief McKinley said it as well, with 2,185 built residential units. And the average is 2.72 per household. That's approximately 5,943 new residents we'd be adding. There's a population density of 3516 per square mile. Again, that's just in the study area. Call volume in the study area, South Apopka, worked with Chief Rios with Orange County's Planning Division, advised in 2020 and 21, they responded to an average of 1,554 EMS calls, 168 fire calls, and 68 miscellaneous calls, for a total of 1,808 calls for service per year in the study area. Our current AFD station call volumes are listed there. Station 1's 33, just above 3,300. Station 2 is 17, just above 17. Station 3, 4 or 5, you can see there out to Station 6. So with the with the calls for service in the service area, the study area would become higher than 5 out of 6 of our stations as far as calls for service. Again, that would mean pretty much a 16.4% increase in calls for service. What does all this warrant? An additional fire station will definitely be required. And the costs associated with that fire station, again, the operating costs would be additional 18 firefighters. Their starting salary with benefits is about just over $1 million for operating. Capital costs, again, an additional station, $2.3 million. Fire engine, 852. Fully equipped is over $1 million these days. An ambulance, 300,000. Fully equipped, over 445,000. And equipment for each starting firefighter, so their bunker gear, all that additional total capital cost of 152 for that. So total capital cost of about approximately $4 million. Again, thoughts and considerations, as Chief McKinley was stating, any annexation definitely demands significant planning. Ensuring we want to meet all the needs of the current community, of course, the community being annexed, and resources definitely need to be in place prior to annexation. Again, without this, would certainly decrease the level to all residents involved, including response times and units available. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Nesta?
Oh,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Which service station, when calls are made from South Apopka, which station responds to?
Currently 28.
Which one?
28.
Orange County.
Orange County.
Oh, okay, when you're saying 28, I'm sorry. I was like, what happened to ours?
Yes.
So they respond 28, and 28 is where are they located?
They're just down.
Claricones.
Yeah, Claricone. Yep, sorry.
Claricona, is that the one?
Just past Keene.
Yep.
Just past Keene.
Okay.
Just past Keene on Clark.
It's actually here. 28. You can see on the commissioner.
Okay.
And what happens to that fire station?
Well, that's something that's up, for discussion. They still cover. So when you talk about the study area, 28 covers more than just that study area. They cover. So you can see on the image here, just the outlined area in black is the study area. There's parts to the east, south that the 28 would still cover. I would imagine they would move closer to a COE or something like that, if need be.
Because it's not even in our study area.
Right.
It's just outside, just south of our study.
Gotcha. Okay. The with that new public safety building, wouldn't that kind of cover our needs for a new fire station?
That's going to go to cover the 3,300 calls we currently run in Station 1's area. This type of call volume and the density that goes along with that is certainly warrants an additional.
Separate.
Yeah.
And would it be something that's as big as like Station 5 and 6, or is it something that's more of a?
It would be the same footprint basically, but
Okay.
realistically the size of Station 28, really, which is an engine ambulance and personnel. That's why we asked for I think it was 18 because we 15 for staffing, but 3 for growth and time off and things like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Smith?
And so where would we build Station 8? Station 7, I mean.
Station 7.
Yeah, if we're going to
This
build a
could be
station
Station 7.
in South Apopka, where would you build the station?
Well, that's and again something that's up for discussion. Where we probably best be placed. An option, just thinking off the top of my head, is even the training center. We have property there that we could certainly build a station there and kind of use it as a when you typically fire is one of the last things that goes in place. A lot of times you have your public services, your infrastructure that goes in place, police goes in place. Fire is one of the last ones, and you can see that even where Station 6 was placed originally. Just moving it where we did to Harmon Road exponentially increased or decreased our response times based on some of the studies we did and things like that. So really, where we put it is obviously critically important, but I would want it somewhere obviously in the mix of the proposed area.
Okay.
Commissioner Becker?
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with the idea that there's an entire station that's needed for that small of an area. You know, when we're redoing the public safety building, I'm assuming that we're not designing that based off of our current staffing model, because that would be a significant miss if we're going to be spending upwards of $56 million for our current levels of service, knowing that we're a very fast-growing city. So, you know, with 86% of those calls in the study area being EMS, why would we not just account for that in the public services building that we're going to design to be able to cover that area?
Sir, certainly, you know, the public safety area does have room for growth developed in there as far as that sort of thing. But like, we're also worried about the current growth of the city as well. You know, there's certain things, and really when you look at an area as dense as this with already proven calls for service in that area, that's something that it's busier than 5 of our 6 stations. That's like saying we don't need Station 2 right now. We do, and with the growth coming and things like that, it certainly, you know, allocates.
What is the opportunity? Because Station 6, I mean, in my head, is the closest one to that area. How,
Sure.
you know, is that, and they're obviously well
And
below the
Six
call volume for
Station,
right now, but
it's going up.
oh,
and
yeah,
up and
sure,
up.
because there's a lot of multifamily and all that
Yes, sir.
stuff going on.
Yes, sir. And understand that 6 and 1 would also, of course, support this area as well if there was an additional station place. But there's a lot of, you know, unit utilization. We look at that a lot. How often are units being used throughout the day? And there are certain ratios that go into that play. And this, again, certainly warrants an additional station.
Yeah, and point being, I mean, this area is pretty much built out. Like, we know what the volume is going to be pretty consistently year over year. Because I don't know if 1808 is wildly inconsistent with what the 5-10 year trend is. I'm not sure. I'm just looking at a vacuum of 1808. I don't know if that's a whole bunch more than the year before. I don't know. But the 1808, is that specifically for the region that's outlined in your slide?
Yes.
It's not just total
Yeah,
28 service
28's
area?
28's total for the 2 years was 4710, fire 564, other 209, for a total of 2741 calls per average. So this is, again, just that specific to that study area.
Okay. And then how often have you all had to, from an Apopka perspective, covered, or, you know, honored the joint local or the interlocal agreement to provide fire backup in this area?
Yeah, we have actually run into that area this last year about 200 times. I looked at that the other day.
So 200 of the
We
1808, or
responded
that's additive
200
to the-
times, but we were on scene 100 times. In other words, they canceled us half the time before we arrived on scene.
Okay. Is that, but that's above and beyond the 1808 number? Well, 1808 is just what county did, and then we could,
Yes, sir. 1808 is what the county report does.
and then same question for Chief McKinley. I mean, is there any other specific need outside of the capital costs that you highlighted for that area? But
Right. No, pretty, you know, those are the bread and butter.
okay.
Commissioner Velasquez?
No, nothing.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you.
Bradley?
Radley Williams, Parks and Rec Director. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. In the study area, there are 2 Parks and Recreation locations or facilities that we took a look at. The first being Wheatley Park on 2nd West 18th Street. And just provided some property highlights for reference. It's approximately 6 acres, contains a basketball courts, tennis courts, fitness path, playground, picnic area, rental pavilion, and sand volleyball courts. This property is actually owned by the Orange County School Board. There is a joint use agreement between the school board and the county for original development of the park back in 1992 and maintenance and upkeep of the park. So basically the county maintains the park for the school board. And we've generated an annual maintenance cost based off of our current costs for contracted services at about $44,000 a year to maintain that property. That does not include any capital upgrades or routine or capital maintenance on the playground or court surfaces. The other location is the John H. Bridges Community Center at 445 West 13th Street. This property, or this facility, is operated from the Community Action Department for the county. Some property highlights for this facility: it's approximately 14.15 acres. It does house a variety of service partnerships, including the Orange County Community Action Partnership, education, which provides educational programs, jobs training, and senior services, in addition to energy efficiency assistance. And it does house a separate Head Start program on property. Annual maintenance costs were provided by the county at $237,000, and our estimated annual personnel cost was a little over $160,000. That's based off of 3 staff. Also, please note that this does not include full benefits. If they were to be full-time staff, that add about 30% to that number, kicking that a little closer to $210,000. And those are 2 Parks and Rec facilities that we look to consider in this area. Have any questions?
Hey, Commissioner Nesta?
Is there any rental income that we can get from either of these?
I mean, you could do court rentals at the Wheatley Park. The John H. Bridges Community Center, there's not much rental income in that facility that we could attain. It could be a place, though, that we run additional programming for youth camping or youth camps.
So there's opportunities there for that.
There's opportunities to implement some programming, but again, it would not be very much revenue coming in for that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and to that point, though, we're not even sure that the county's going to give us the building or.
Yes, this is operated by the county right
exactly.
now.
So,
yeah.
they're very generous, so.
Commissioner Smith.
Well, my question is, why wouldn't the county continue to operate those facilities anyway? Just because we annexed into the city? I don't understand. They're still Orange County.
Right.
So-
There's no, we're not saying that this would happen. This is just a scenario if it were to be given to us to operate. So
Okay.
just for consideration.
All right.
Yeah.
Commissioner Becker?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see the need in this room tonight to shake our head at anything. I think anything's on the table. Like, for us to sit here and posture and say, this ain't gonna happen, I think is unfair to everybody in this room. We're here to gather facts, to have a more rich determination of what we want to do going forward. Because clearly this is important. This is important. There's more people in this room tonight on this topic than there ever is during budget workshops. So to say that cost is the determining factor of this is complete baloney. We are here to have a very targeted conversation on this. To that end, is there an opposite, to Commissioner Nesta's point, is there a other side of the ledger to this? Is there any service-based income revenues that come in to offset the 398 expense? If not, I'm okay. That's fine.
There wouldn't be much other than some additional programming that we could possibly offer, and that'd be more of the youth. There could be some senior programming as well, but those are traditionally, we try and keep the cost low or the registration costs low for those. So we try and keep it more of a break even for the added service. So there's not much revenue that we see in the facility. It would be more of a service-based facility.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Velasquez?
Yep.
Nothing. Okay. Thank you, Radley.
Thank you.
All right. Dio.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioner. David Atwood, Public Service Director. My presentation will overview what public service maintenance activity entails and cost of performing such service within the area. The presentation.
Can you get a little closer to the
right.
mic so everybody can hear you?
And the presentation
Thank you.
outline will be the infrastructures and basis for the cost estimate, the maintenance services, and the summary. The infrastructure and basis of the cost estimates is based on the annexed area is 1.69 square miles with 25.84 miles of new roadway, 94 acres of right-of-way, 14 retention pond, 7 will be non-MSBU, 7 will be an MSBU, 10 miles of Corp Street, and approximately 2,200 residential units. Now, this information were obtained from our staff looking at the area and the property appraiser to get some of these informations. The maintenance service are as follow. It will be water, sewer, and reclaim service, sanitation, street maintenance, stormwater maintenance. And there are existing contract and agreement which Orange County do have for that service area, which I'm going to just briefly outline. With respect to the water, sewer, and reclaim service, this existing utility service area that we have include this area. So therefore, annexation would provide no impact to the city of Apopka because they're already within our service area for the water, sewer, and reclaim services. Except in the South Apopka area, there is a very limited reclaim customer base there. In terms of sanitation, the sanitation service right now for that area is being performed by Orange County. So if we are going to annex that area and take it over in the city of Apopka, the service that we are going to perform is 2 residential pickup per week, 1 new bulky pickup per week, and also 1 new recycle per week. To do that, we will need a startup requirement. We will need to have 1 new residential automated sanitation truck, which costs about approximately $500K, 1 new cloth truck, 1 new rail loader for yard waste pickup, and at least 3 operators and 2 new laborers for the cost of $270K. So these are the startup costs if we were to take over the sanitation services. In terms of the annual operating costs, I think we estimate that to be $600K. And approximately, I think the money or the revenue that we will receive will be close to that amount.
So just to stop right there, so you said that we would pretty much break even there. There wouldn't be a revenue generator, but
Right.
it'd pay for itself.
Right.
Well,
Because
operating, but you got the
because-
capital cost up front that you got.
Right, but the capital cost up front, though. You have to give.
Right, I
the
understand
start-
that, but the actual operating itself.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right, will be a break even. With respect to the street maintenance services, these are within the right-of-way mowing, pothole repair, base repair, paving, signing and marking, existing sidewalk, street sweeping, tree trimming and removal, street resurfacing, and sitting call. This will be new service that we are going to take over from public service. So we will need a startup cost. We will need at least a minimum of 2 maintenance worker, 1 new truck, and a new administrative assistant. Because these people will answer the call, the work orders, and so forth. The annual operation cost will be approximately $600K to perform these services. This is our estimate.
That's, but your startup personnel cost is baked into that $600K on the previous slide.
Yes.
Yeah, let me go back there. Right.
So the 120, 70, and 60. Well, actually, I take that
Yeah,
back.
it's 120 for
The truck
2
would be
maintenance
capped.
worker, 1 new truck is 70K, and 1 new administrator is 60K.
Okay.
And that includes if you have the new administrative assistant, you have to get a computer, you have to get certain sort of things. It's inclusive in there.
And I don't think we have some of these specific slides with this information.
No, this, to be honest with you, I think the slide that you have with you was an old slide. I was out of town because of an emergency, so this was revised after I came back.
Understood, no problem. If we can just send a copy of this one.
Right, sure, I can do that.
Thank you.
Right, with respect to the stormwater maintenance services, that will have the non-SBU stormwater pond, mowing the fencing. These are the services that will be performed, ditch and swale maintenance, inlet joint sealing, inlet top repair. And these are some of the items that we really perform on routine maintenance. There will be an annual assessment, stormwater assessment anticipated to be increased. Right now, we have, I think it's $25 per year, right? But that fee, I sure next year will have to be increased to perform some of these services throughout the city, not for the annex area, but throughout the city. The annual stormwater operation costs, right, we're estimated to be $100K, right? If you look at that number and look at what we are going to receive, 25, right, per resident for about 2,200 resident, it will be, this cost will be a slightly higher by about $40,000, right? But we can able to perform these services, on a routine basis there with the stormwater fees. With respect to the existing contract and agreement, currently Orange County have an MSBU retention pond and MSBU street light. They have set up those. So if we were to annex this area, we will have to observe those and maybe discontinue that and set up a new city MSBU will be created for the rate, commensurate with the cost of continuing these services. But that is something that I have not really fully explored. I just get the numbers and the inventory. We were unable to get all the facts in those. So in terms of a summary, the sanitation, the startup cost will be $1.67 million. The annual operating cost will be $600K. And you can see an aspect they be funded by the enterprise fund. So that is a wash. It's really just a startup cost. In terms of the street, the startup cost will be $250, and the annual operation cost will be $600K to perform those routine services. For the stormwater, we don't have a stormwater startup cost. It's because some of the maintenance portion we said, we can use them to perform some of the other service there. The annual operation cost will be $100K. So with that, the total public service cost, if you were to annex this area for the routine maintenance, the startup cost would be $1.92 million, and the annual maintenance cost would be $1.3 million.
So again, to Commissioner Nessa's point of the annual maintenance, the OpEx piece of it, of the 1.3, that's a gross number. What's the net number? If we say that sanitation would more or less pay for itself, if stormwater through non-ad valorem assessments would knock off, say, 50% of it, what's the net? Or it wouldn't truly be 1.3 million, right? It would be somewhere half of that, or
Yeah, it'd be
750,
it would be at least 65% of that.
65.
And again, this is just taking the basic statistic that we were able to obtain. So that number was just like a bare and bone cost estimate I did here, right? That to show that, if you annex the area with this funding, we can able to perform the service.
All right. Mr. Nesta?
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Did we do any type of analysis of the current road conditions?
No.
Okay.
To be honest with you, we haven't done any assessment within the entire area. This was just based on the broad brush picture here, right? When if they have a report or a service, we haven't got those information. So in terms of the roadway, the prediction that I have done here, if you look at what we have done, we have 190 miles of roadway right now, and we are doing 10 miles, right? So I assume that if we are doing 5% of that, I assume the same number. If they have 25 point something miles, I will perform 5% of that, which will be 1.3 miles of roadway. And that's the way how I developed the cost, right? The detail to come up with those numbers.
Okay. And then we have 94 acres of right-of-way that we would have to maintain. Do we have like an average cost per acre of what a right-of-way takes to maintain?
Yeah, it's $47.50, I think.
$47.50
per acre. It's per month, right.
The MSBUs, the non-MSBUs, is there an opportunity at all to convert those to actual MSBUs that we can share the cost otherwise?
I think there's different. The MSBU, when you set up an MSBU, is for those retention ponds that serve a subdivision or something, I think those non-MSBU defined here is those ponds that serve like a roadway, network within the right of way or take the
Understood.
drainage off the
Okay.
runoff. So I think, I don't know if that's a possibility, but that is,
Most of them,
You're right.
it's for
Public.
stormwater for roads.
Yeah,
Right.
understood. So you really couldn't.
right, because the street maintenance come under general fund, and that's come under, taxes or whatever stuff that you generate from fuel or those.
Sure.
things.
In reference to sanitation itself, how do we compare to the services Orange County offer?
That's a good question. The analysis that I did here, which is a broad brush analysis, right? In terms of our operation, we have $5 million that we, as our operating fund, and we have 18,500 residents. So it comes up to be like $270 a year, approximately. But that's taking out of sort of the commercial and everything else. Right now, I think Orange County is $250, or $260, well, per resident, right? So that's the reason why I said the amount of money will be a wash for us.
So it's pretty equal there, but aren't they only pick up once a week, correct?
That's correct.
So we offer, it would
And we
be
are going to be
a far superior service.
That's correct.
For the same price.
You're correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
And that was only an analogy I was going to make as well, is the service that we provide is going to be greater than what Orange County currently do, where they only pick up once a week, that we pick up twice a week.
Twice a
In
week.
addition to that, we pick up bulky items once
Right.
a week, as well as recycle once a week that Orange County doesn't do, and they have to call in order for that to be picked up.
That's correct. You're right.
Okay. Commissioner Becker?
No, I echo the service aspect of it.
Commissioner Velasquez?
No questions other than that. In all the departments, we have the superior level of service with sanitation.
Thank you so much.
The one question I've got on we talk about our BMAP. I mean, it's a hidden liability that, I don't know that you're prepared to give me a number, but, as we look forward to this 20-year contract, as we have to meet higher and higher standards for reducing nitrogen and phosphorus going into the groundwater, if we take on a bunch of septic tanks, then we are going to be, at some point, be subject to doing something, either hooking them to sewer or something else, like we're doing maybe with Wekiva Glen. So there's a hidden cost that it could be a huge number when you look at, if we just take, for instance, let's just say we converted them over with no help from the state or federal. If we moved them over to the new septic tanks we have at Wekiva Glen, there's $15,000 per house.
right.
So ever how many houses we have in South Apopka that are on septic tanks, it's $15,000 per to get them to help us meet that BMAP.
Right. Mayor, you're correct there, because we haven't done an inventory of the area to see how much residents are on septics, right? How many are in sewer, right? But we know we have some infrastructure in there
Right.
where they can connect. It maybe we have to extend the line, but none of those analyses were done, right? So, as again I said, this was a broad brush analysis,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
to present information to you.
But isn't the county on that same BMAP?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
But generally speaking, how many would we take a guess at are on septic versus on half, more than half? Your magic 65% number?
I would say around, Vladimir, I think we were around 40%, I would think.
On septic?
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna.
It's a guess. I said it's a guess because we were looking at it, but we couldn't get an estimate. I mean, I have a map here, but I couldn't really pinpoint the stuff, but I would say about 40%.
Well,
No, you asked me to make an assessment, so I'm making.
you got a better number for us, Vlad?
Overall, there's over 5,000 in the entire city that the Department of Health has been recording. So here, I would say it's probably around 40 to 50% at least. We can look at some numbers and we can do some estimate. We haven't looked into.
Right.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I had a quick. So theoretically, is Orange County would have to abandon some sewer and water, and we would have to then fill in that space, or what does that logistically look like? What does that look like? How does this work?
Well, we
supply
give,
water.
we survive water to county residents. I mean, it's, we
All of
may or
them?
may not. No,
Yes.
no. Some.
That would be a sticking point, I would assume, at that point.
So who would it be we don't supply water to?
Well, they're within our service area.
We supply some water to
yeah.
county residents. The county doesn't supply any water
Sure.
to city residents.
But
Right.
we would, I guess when we annex, we would be taking over all of that then?
Well, right now, they're within our service area. They're already in our service, by the city.
So there's an interlocal agreement that was entered between City of Apopka and Orange County back in 2005. I think it was early 2005, maybe.
Okay.
January. So that entire area is currently in the city
In the-
utility service area.
So overall, that wouldn't
Water
change
recovery.
No,
drastically.
that's operating. That's all operating.
Okay.
Pretty well, other than the BMAP, which would
Sure.
not, that'd be capital. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dio. All right.
Can we take a
Wow.
quick, this is the last
You
one,
wanna do
right?
that? Sure.
Yeah, let's take a quick
Quick break.
restroom break.
Okay. All right. let you. Okay. Right, no, I know. I'm right. I mean, you're right. No, I know. It's, yes. Okay, Edward, you want to go ahead and start? Go ahead, Edward.
Okay, well, thank you. I had to go. I couldn't make it.
Sound like Nick had the same issue, so.
Oh, he did? Is he here? Yeah. Oh, this is what Ed gave us. Okay. Did you get what Ed gave you?
Yep.
Okay.
Good. All right, Edward.
Mayor, Commissioners, so you've heard this evening from all of the departments on what the cost will be. You've heard capital costs, you've heard operating costs, from enterprise funds to governmental funds. So you've heard it from all angles. So what I want to do tonight is, and this is a forecast and this is all estimates, but I think it's important that we have at least a picture of if everything was in place, if you had everything in place, capital was in place, you had everything where it needed to be, what would the cost look like going forward on an annual operating if you had to build it into your budget? So that, I'm going to start with revenues. I'm going to work my way down through the schedule. So you saw the taxable values from each one of the classes. They have a total of $225 million in taxable value. The county's millage rate for fire and sheriff, you saw, was 4.0480. The Apopka millage rate currently is 4.1876. That, and Commissioner Becker brought up the difference about the 0.1396 out was not very material. It's not a very big number. It's $31,000. It's not a big number, but there is a difference. As you notice, if this was in our budget, we had everything in place, and we were operating this section of the city, or of the county into the city, it would generate about $944,000 in property tax. We estimate our sales tax would increase by $300,000 by taking in this area because based on how the state calculates, it would give us some additional. We would take some of those sales tax dollars from the county. So approximately $1.3 million would be generated in these revenues in this area. So the first column, or the column that you're looking at after the revenue column is the operating cost. You see on the top. The next column is operating cost. You can see from personnel stat, from a standpoint, police and fire would need about $2.1 million. It would take about $2.1 million in personnel costs annually to operate and service this area. You would have operating costs of about $100,000. That's the operating cost for those stations and for the personnel and for that area. You have capital costs of $5.1 million. Tonight I'm just looking at operating costs. Like I told you, what would it cost if we had everything in place? What would we incur on an ongoing basis to provide service to this area? So you have capital costs of about $5 million. and their vehicles would depreciate over a 7-year period. Their vehicle would be their station would be probably about a 10-year period, and these are, if we were to finance these items over time, how we would pay for those. So it's about $600,000 in annual capital cost if you had everything, all the infrastructure, all the stuff in place. So based on the revenue generated from this area, from a public safety standpoint, you're operating at just under $1 million. You have about $1 million deficit from a public safety standpoint. Everything in place, and we were able to provide all the services. Public services, you saw Commissioner Becker talk earlier about $1.3 million. It's really about $600,000 will be the ongoing for public services between personnel and operating costs. In this area, would be about $600,000 going forward. There was a vehicle in there as capital of about $70,000. I have not included that in here. It's a small amount. It's not very significant when it comes to that point. Keep in mind, this analysis, I have excluded sanitation, water and sewer, stormwater, because those components are enterprise funds, and those rates, the county rates would go away. They would come onto the city rates, and those funds would have to be self-sustained and operate from those rates. If we were to take on the parks and recreation components, it's about $400,000. Keep in mind, Bradley said that one of his numbers did not include benefits of about 30%. So it's a little bit more than this, 80,000. But again, we're looking at big picture. If we were operating this today, what would it take and what would we generate if we annex this section in? And then you see a Wheatley Park of his almost $45,000 for his operating. So when you put all that together tonight, everything in place, if we had the manpower, if police and fire, everybody had everything what we need today, you'd be sitting at about a $2 million deficit. Your capital would be about $600,000 a year to pay your capital back over time. So overall, if you look at the whole operations, it's about a $3.4 million operating budget that would be built into your budget if we were operating this area. They generate about half of that, or 1.2. So, so from that standpoint, that's where we would be if we were providing that service like we provide to the same services we provide to our current city residents. From that standpoint. So I wanted to kind of stop, and if there are any questions on this part, and maybe answer those before.
Yeah, I just want to follow to make sure I understand the total bottom line. So I'm glad that you pointed this out, because I was looking at the far right column for capital, but yet it's on a horizontal column for police, fire, and fire stations. So the net effect down at the bottom is not reflecting all of this, right? Because if you're saying that total revenues is 1.2 million up at the top,
right?
Down below where we said we have a deficit of 2.025 million, right, that's just on OpEx,
right?
Right, and then it's a little misleading because total capital cost over on the far right-hand column shows 632, but really it's 632 plus 5.1 million for public safety.
Well, the 5.1 million is the total capital. What we would, if we were to borrow money, we would borrow 5 million, pay for it, put everything in place, and we would pay about 600,000 a year to pay that back over time.
So is that debt service?
It would be debt service, right?
Okay. And then the only other question I had was on the presentation that Jim had presented. I just need help understanding the number, because on slide, just said land use review, and under it had 2021 taxes, and it had a number of 3.5 million. How does that compare to the 1.2 million that we have estimated? So
Commissioner, in the 3 million that you saw in his slides, that was all taxes. So that's county tax, school board, St. John's, library, that's all taxes. Our portion of that 3 million would be 944,000.
Mr. Velasquez?
Well, my question is this. I mean, all of this is like total numbers. But how do we kind of even start to move forward so it's not one, you understand that it's not one big, like, okay, this is what it's gonna cost as soon as we annex it? I mean, how do we move forward so that there's an eventual increase or an eventual expense? I mean, how do you do that?
Well, Commissioner, you can't gradually move in. I mean, when you have to have all this in place,
Oh, you do?
you have to have everything in place so you can provide those services. And this is what it would cost with everything in place at that time.
Well, theoretically, right, we could kind of do this in like staged approaches, which is maybe a little, I may be jumping the gun of us having a kind of a more general conversation, but couldn't we do this in a way that says every 3 years, every year, whatever it may be, we take on one additional street, we take on a next additional street over the next 10 years or something along those lines? I don't know if that is a thing, but I don't know what that looks like. We're to slowly start an agreement with Orange County to slowly start bringing in what we need to balance this, so that it's not all one lump sum. It's okay, once we get 10 streets in, then we need a fire station, whatever it may be. Again, I'm not saying we need decisions tonight. I'm not saying I need an official opinion. I'm just saying let's look outside the box a little bit.
Along those lines, the county attorney's office has rendered an opinion in regards to annexation that if two parcels on either side of a road are annexed, the road becomes the jurisdictional responsibility of the annexing municipality. If this were to be implemented using the county attorney's opinion on that matter, every single road within South Apopka would immediately become the city's jurisdiction. And that's the county's opinion. So at that point, unless we have to enter into a separate agreement with the county, and I can't speak for the county, whether how willing they are going to be to gradually maintain. If I were sitting in the county's shoes and the city comes along and saying, we're going to take all the cities, if I'm in the county, I'm saying, you have at it.
But I guess the point is it's not impossible. That's all I'm saying. I don't need an official opinion and a yes or a no. I'm just saying it's something to think about, that to Commissioner Velasquez's point, we don't need to be spending $7 million right now. It won't, somewhere around there. This can be broken down. We can eat this elephant a little bit at a time if we just think outside the box. This isn't our final workshop. We're going to get around this. We're going to keep discussing this more and more and more. So we need to, that's something that I think we can think about in some capacity, or somebody that's way smarter than I am can actually implement something like this to say, okay, well, we could go at this in this way. Again, not looking for an opinion or a yes or no, just saying that could be an avenue, Commissioner Velasquez, of how we progressively move forward.
Commissioner Smith?
If I'm not mistaken, there are places in the city currently where the city owns the road but don't own the right-of-way, and own the right-of-way and don't own the road. So I don't understand this scenario that the attorney from the county is putting forth, that we have two houses that we own the entire road, when that's not the case today.
No, that is the state, that the position of the. It's important to note that there's a difference between ownership and title and jurisdiction. So the question now becomes: is it a question of, do we have to take all title to the roads? Is the county going to enter into an agreement? Now, the county has been, and we deal with this a lot up in the Kelly Park area where we've had annexations, and we have that area, and the county still stands by the position of, once they're in, both sides are within the city, that portion of the road falls within the city. There's other jurisdictional aspects. Now, that's jurisdiction. As to ownership, my position is that unless we actually have a formal agreement as governed under Florida statutes, which transfers the title and ownership of the right-of-way from one governmental entity to another, ownership still retains with the original entity until that agreement is entered. The county does not seem to have the same opinion as I do. So these are all issues that,
But that's the
I'm
way
not
it
trying
is
to be.
currently.
I'm not trying to be a naysayer, but I'm working with the tools that exist at this time that we have to work with, and And so these are issues, and these are issues that have to be presented in a report to the county prior to this, and prior to the ordinance even being presented and adopted. So these are all issues that have to be hashed out with the county. If we elect to go forward, these are issues that have to be presented in a report to the county prior to the ordinance being considered. So, I mean, it's still open, but I'm just giving you the issues that we have based on the tools that we have presently and that we have to work with. And I'm always under the assumption that I have an entity on the other side that isn't going to be very fluid when it comes to change.
All right. And then in reference to the dollars and the cents, and as I said earlier, that we're not annexing tonight. This is a workshop. And as the chief of police said earlier, we need to have a plan in place. And so since we know that this is the direction that we want to go into, then we need to start planning now and preparing for those in the future. So since the police department is not going to need a substation, but the fire department does, so we can plan in year one that we're going to build a new fire station and then allocate position to the police department to start adding additional police officers. And I don't see it as a 10-year plan, but something that we need to start working on now and putting in place, knowing that that's the direction that we want to go. And therefore, these capital costs can be taken off one piece at a time.
Mr. Becker?
Yeah, I mean, I shared concerns about the roadways, and thankfully Commissioner Moore was kind enough to schedule a meeting with some Orange County folks around transportation that I'm going to be going to in December. So I'll hold judgment until then, until I have a more fact-based conversation to have. But my assumption would be is if a mass annexation took place, we would just automatically assume all maintenance of those roadways. I mean, Orange County's not going to want to glide path. They're going to say, there you go, right? And that would be the assumption that I'm operating under. But I mean, the fact of the matter is, I mean, nothing on this page screams special budgeting. This is stuff that we should be budgeting anyways. I mean, to Chief McKinley's point, these are officers that should already be on the books. We're significantly below standard. So, you know, whether it's officers that we're staffing for this specific purpose, but we're going to grow well beyond the scope of this effort anyways. And, you know, a lot of these things are just things that we're going to have to budget for anyways. And so I don't see this as, you know, anything unique. Maybe the timing becomes unique, but us finding ways to accommodate a growing city is not. And so I think as we budget for it, and it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that the kind of the timeline of, like, if we were to make a decision tonight, which we're not, like, to have those dialogue with Orange County, to have those dialogue with voters, to have an ordinance that passes through hearings, to have a referendum and to have that referendum voted on, once that's approved, and then the kind of the cool off period beyond that, I mean, what are you talking about? Like a year, year and a half, 2 years at best?
I mean, statutorily speaking, we have to present to the county prior to commencing the actual annexation procedures that report with the city's plan for assuming the municipal services within the annexed area.
But like, assume that we did everything by the book, and started the clock ticking tomorrow. Like, and assume everything happy path, everything just kind of fell into place. What's the like reasonable time frame that like it would even come to fruition? A year? Like, again, I'm asking you to get out a crystal ball and tell me fact. But
I mean, it's all dependent on what's the course of action, because the statute provides that any annexation referendum is to occur in a general election, and not unless the city elects to have its own special election for this. I mean, our next general election is in 2024.
Right. So point being is that, and if that's the case, if we have to follow that kind of cadence of things, you're talking 2, maybe even 3 fiscal years that we're having conversations around properly budgeting this on a proactive basis versus saying, oops, we got to get this now. Let's write, you know, stroke the check. I don't think that we're in that place. And so again, I go back to the whole conversation around what are the wants and desires of the people. Once we provide them the factual basis or the facts behind this, okay, what's the temperature check at this point? And I firmly believe that, obviously we can't take any formal action tonight, but I think the next logical step, once we kind of agree that these are the numbers that we should publish and make public, is do a very formal, not just a 5-question survey, but really have a partnership with Orange County to get an assessment of what people's heat check is. Because again, we talk to very specific groups of people. And if they have an opinion that they really want this, and yet 80% of the people are of the opposite point of view, okay, we're spinning wheels here. And I think that the most prudent thing to do is to have a survey that goes out to both property owners, even if they're not going to be voting in a particular election on this matter, as well as to the registered voters that live within the specific region. And it's an assessment of, hey, do you like Orange County services? You could have 95% of the people that say, we love the county. Great, fantastic, they're doing something for you. A lot of times, from what I've heard directly, is it's the accessibility of government. And logically speaking, people that live close to this city hall have this idea that, hey, that building says City Hall on it. They're the ones that should be making sure that I'm good to go. And that's an education issue, but at the same time, you understand where they're coming from. And so I think that we have a survey that goes out to say, hey, are you satisfied with Orange County services? Do you feel like they're accessible? Do they feel like they meet your need from a government perspective? If you were to change because I think Orange County could use this as constructive kind of feedback too. If there's services that you feel are lacking from a county perspective, which ones would you lean into and want your county representative to say, hey, we got to fix these things? Then you kind of transition into something that says, okay, now, if you were to consider annexation into the city of Apopka, here's what you're looking at. Here's a price tag, but not just the price tag, the services. We talked about the twice-a-week sanitation pickup. We talked about, what a fully staffed law enforcement police agency could be. We talked about, accessibility to fire and rescue services. Some of the benefit statements that kind of compare, and not politically motivated, but just kind of a metric that says, here's what county offers, here's what city would offer, and then here's your bottom line, what it means to you as a taxpayer or as a resident. And then it gives them to say, how likely are you to annex into the city of Apopka knowing these facts? What are the things that, and if you're not interested in it, why are you not interested in it? Is it purely financially driven? Do you not think that the city of Apopka provides the services commensurate to Orange County? But at least it gives us a pulse of what we're really dealing with. That way, the next time we come back and have a conversation like this, we can use some of that insight to help drive it. It's not the end all be all. I think that final decision is going to be after we've all kind of digested what we've heard tonight, along with the feedback that we hear from the public at large. But it all goes to serve to that, so that we can make the best educated decision possible. And I think that's all what we're after. And I thank the mayor. I thank you all for coming together, having a very formal presentation on the matter. This has been very, very helpful. But I think to me, that's the next logical step. I think from a cost perspective, do a formal survey like that where we get really good feedback, I think would be money well spent as the next logical step.
Well, Commissioner, to that point, one of the things we've been talking about as a staff is doing that. We want to get this information out, get the facts out, give everybody the facts, the information, make sure they have everything. And that was one of the things we talked about, doing a poll, a survey in this area, first of all, to see what the wishes are. Because you're right, if it's 75% say I'm happy with Orange County, then we're wasting our time. We need to wait. But we can learn from it, and they can learn from it. If there's things that they can do better, then it can help them too. So,
and to kind of add to that and kind of refine your idea just a little bit more, I think it would be more impactful if instead of having kind of just blind surveys, if we had somebody will hire an independent third party that's not from Apopka, an intermediary of sorts that kind of goes and hosts town halls in local churches, civic centers, whatever it may be, in South Apopka specifically, that has the dialogue, has the conversation, kind of compiles all that for us and then presents it to us. I don't like blind surveys. I think we can interpret that information a little too many ways, and I don't like that. So I think having an intermediary that doesn't have a stake in the game one way or the other, I think would help to represent all sides better, and not not try to sway the information one way or the other. So I think that would kind of be a more impactful way, is to have somebody like that, and then they can present it. And I think, to your point as well, an additional step is we need to decide how, once we have that information, where we go from there, whether it's a vote that is both city proper and unincorporated, or is it just unincorporated, the pros, the cons to all those scenarios, the timelines, things like that. So to your point, absolutely, I think that's definitely a great idea. I don't prefer blind surveys. I'd really prefer to hire somebody, a third party, that can go in and have that open dialogue to really see not only are you happy, yes or no, why are you not happy? What is your resident, what is your specific issue? So, and it's a lot to learn too, that it's not actually the homeowners, the residents, it's only voting members that can decide this, which is interesting to me, because it can be, somebody can own 13, 15 homes down there and not have a say in this, only their tenants do. So that's,
That was the point about the 50-50 owner-occupied
Yeah.
situation is, again, you want to have both residents. Now, there could be people that live in a tenant kind of relationship, non-owner occupied property, that have lived there for decades.
sure.
And you do want to have their perspective. But at the same time, too, at the end of the day, a property owner is going to be the one that's on the hook for whatever financial outcomes come as a result of the final vote. I completely agree. I mean, I think the outcome that I'm looking for, whether it's a blind survey, if it's a moderated survey, facilitated conversation, it's not to have a binary yes or no. Yes, I would want to do this, or no, I would not want to. It's more of a, if so, why? If not, why? And have that kind of dialogue. So I don't care how it's facilitated. I just want that outcome. So that way, we're not going through very formal conversations with Orange County before we get the idea that this is something that's very, very generally welcomed within the community. So, and then the last bit that I had, and again, this might be kerosene on the fire, but if we're talking deficit money and things like that, is there an opportunity again to kind of clean up the jagged edges of Apopka? So not just necessarily having South Apopka in view, but other areas that would be both kind of viewed as good areas to annex, both from a county perspective and for city. Because again, if it's a cost savings from an OpEx perspective from Orange County to say, hey, we're really having to go too far, it's not really advantageous for us, but hey, it's a higher tax base that's less needful of the services, that can kind of balance out so we're not in such a deficit position. So that would be interesting to see if there's a perspective there, not for tonight's conversation, but as we talk about this further.
Commissioner Velasquez?
No, I got a lot of information from the questions.
Well, I just like to say, if we're going to do the facilitator from outside individual, that not only do we have a facilitator to do the area that we're talking about annexing in, but also that same facilitator also holds workshops for the current city residents as well. So that we have an equal representation, and it's done in the same way on both sides. And so that's what I think would be the best.
I think it
thing
would
to
help
do.
too, because we're not going too far then into this process. If either both sides don't want it, one side absolutely, I think that helps a lot. I think it's a great idea.
A couple things, Edward. If we take the 2 million and the 632, what does that equal out to as a millage rate increase?
So that's one of the slides that you have as well. So currently our millage rate is 4.1876, and we generate about $20 million right now is where we're set. If we had to cover the $2 million deficit, if you will, it would have, the only place you can get from is your property tax. That's the only revenue source you have that you can get that from. About 0.4 tenths of a mil would generate about $2 million. So that's kind of without capital.
So,
Now, keep in mind, this does not include capital. If you were going to include a capital component for a certain period of time for the station built, it'd be about 0.55 or 0.5
but
of
even
a mil.
0.5 would get you the like the bulletproof vest, the car, the police cruisers, or to go to the next level, which is the fire stations, be 0.55 or something.
0.5, 5.6. Yeah, we'll get you the whole.
So-
That's all in.
Right, okay, so I guess we're at the point, we'll get some public comment, maybe then we'll wrap it up. So anybody would like to speak on the issue?
Yes.
You got some cards? Okay, thank you, Susan.
So, John Ware?
Hello, my name is John Ware, 1968 Frenzel Drive, Apopka, 32703. Real nervous. I've never done this before, so my apologies. But anyway, I appreciate what the board's trying to do here. The motivation for annexation is without question. Everybody wants everybody to be better. There's a lot of blighted area over in the South Apopka area, and I honestly think that they could use what we have. And maybe Orange County could have done more in the past, but I'm glad to see that Ms. Christine is here today to be at the meeting. So she's Orange County Commissioner for the area. What I think we need to do, what I think could be done more, is to communicate more with the needs of the area to Orange County. They're better able to take care of Orange County. Orange County has a $5.9 billion budget, where Apopka is at $65 million. And to break that down a little bit, for every $100 that Apopka has, Orange County has $4,000. Who's better able? So honestly, I think it could be a disservice to annex Apopka because we don't have money. As I was saying, it could be a disservice to the South Apopka to annex them because we don't have the money that Orange County has. Apopka this year, we had a revenue increase over 2 years of 23%. That's the best Apopka has ever done in the history of Apopka. We went from, in 2021, a budget of $52 million. The budget next year will be $65 million. What we're looking at adding here just in capital is 10% of that. A 10% tax increase is not fair to anyone. So in order to service South Apopka, taxes will necessarily have to be increased. Millions in services was discussed tonight. Infrastructure alone is going to be millions. And if we put in pipes and water, and we have I think it's a $250 million water plant we got to build. Is that what it costs? $250 million? Is that what the water plant cost you were talking about?
60.
Oh, it was a $50 million. It's only $50 million. A $50 million water plant. We got a $50 million police department to build. And there's not enough money. As for the South Apopka residents, they're going to have to comply with Apopka's ordinances, and some of them, that's going to cost a lot of money. Many of them can't afford it. Their taxes will necessarily have to go up. Code enforcement will be overwhelmed over there. If you've driven through South Apopka, there are some areas over there. They really need help. I mean, there's literally a junkyard in somebody's front yard, literally. New infrastructure brings new growth. With new growth, I know you've seen what happened when the 419 went north. Oh my goodness, it blew up. Property values went through the ceiling. I know a guy that sold his house over there, made 4 times what he made, got paid 4 times what he paid for it 6 years ago, and he got paid 4 times what he paid for it. Look at 44, where 44 goes west of I-4. All of that property over there has just. Can I have 2 more minutes, please?
Why don't you just send in if you'll send us into your notes and we'll put those into the record. Thank you, Mr. Ware.
We have Clinton Stanley.
Give me more than 4 minutes, though. Don't start it. No, I mean, like you said, we know one workshop won't fix it. But when it comes to something the city wants, money never an issue. But when it comes to something that means near and dear to the people of Apopka, of South Apopka, we got an issue. And please don't refer to South Apopka as they again, because they matters. I got offended when you say they. They only pay 1.2 of the budget. They matters. And also, the city received water bills from how many houses in South Apopka? What is the budget of how many houses pay water bill to the city of Apopka? Also, the resources, 3%, he said 3% makes South Apopka look bad. Those 3% are lack resources. Those 3% are lack recreation. I mean, we're lacking resources, job, affordable housing. So before you go to taking shots at South Apopka, let's see how the county has underserved South Apopka. Let's see how the city doesn't care about South Apopka. And then once you see all that, you see why South Apopka looks the way. So the way of South Apopka look is the city of Apopka and Orange County problem. So it's not South Apopka problem, because you have people in South Apopka that get up every day and go to work. Even the jobs that you have up here, you can fill those jobs with South Apopka. Put on workshops in South Apopka. Give the people resources. Give the people hope. And we know what that is. We know what it is. The problem, he said, a junkyard in the people's house. The county don't service South Apopka like it does Sheila Oaks. I stay in Sheila Oaks, you stay in Sheila Oaks. Yeah, but I love South Apopka, and I wish I could have bought my house in South Apopka. But the county is not doing what they're supposed to do. The city showed us how many years they don't care. Simple as that. The city doesn't care about the problem in South Apopka. So now we need to face the issue at hand. Stop worrying about money, because you know where the money is. You just said $56 million for public. We got the money. I know you have the money. You know you have the money. Let's stop making excuses about why we're not getting things done. Please. And please stop taking shots at South Apopka, because I get offended, because that's not the people of South Apopka problem. The people of South Apopka are underserved, under-resourced, and we all know that. Give us the resources. I wrote it down. He said, the chief said, give us the resources. So give us the resources so we can make a difference within our community. Give us the backing. Let us know that you care, because I know for a fact when I pay my water bill, I come to the city of Apopka. My cousin, she pays her water bill, she comes up here. So that means the city of Apopka has a piece of property on every house in South Apopka. Am I right or wrong? Do every house in South Apopka pay water bill over here? So let me see that. What's the numbers on those budgets? What's those numbers? How much do they contribute to the city of Apopka budget?
0.
Huh?
0.
So the water bill we pay goes to the county?
No, it's just the money that we have to operate the water plant. And so the operational costs
Okay.
equal.
So you saying
It's
the
not a
city
profit center.
So South Apopka is already a part of the city. So
No.
why we're not servicing them? And that fire truck I'm talking about, it ride right past and won't even put out a fire in South Apopka. So is that a part of the budget? We pay for that too? We pay. I'm just trying to figure out, because I'm sick and tired of this. When the city of Apopka want Camp Weewa, Saturday concerts at the amphitheater, they find money for everything you want. But when it comes to something that needs to be done, we got to have this and we got to have that. And we all know it's a bunch of baloney. Just do it. Get like Nike and just do it, Mayor. Just do it.
Okay, Leroy Bell.
Mayor, Commissioner, thank you for this workshop. It's kind of troubling that we're talking about less than 1,500 people. The chief got up here, and I'm glad Commissioner Smith brought it up. He projected this year coming into Apopka, 21,000 people. 21,000 people coming in, and we can see down the pipe where we can take care of them 21,000 and can't do nothing about these 1,500. I look at the 1,500 like a movie. You remember Angel City, where they kept everybody in confinement and they go out to work. Every time they go out to work, they had to spend their money at the company store. For these 1,500 people, for the last 74 years, the city of Apopka been the company store. They do their grocery shopping here. They wash their clothes here. They send their kids here to school. They buy gas here. They contribute to the city of Apopka. The mayor brought up, oh, what about these septic tanks? We're going to have to hit every marker, this, that, if we need to get off septic tank. Well, you got the county commissioner sitting up here. Up north in Apopka, they had to come off on account of the same measures that you have to meet by the state, had to come off of septic tank and go on city water, correct? And that price, what happened to that price tag? People had to pay it, but they got over a 10-year period of time to pay it. Why not the people in South Apopka? Why? I told you in 2018 when I ran, it was on the platform that in order for growth, you need to put in infrastructure. Right now, we got over 3,000 houses being built out around flooding and everything going on, but nobody's talking about revenue. Well, you're talking about revenue to fix that. And I'll echo the young man just left. I know you got the money. You got grants, you got CRA money, but you can take that and put it down. This city attorney should let you know it's a lot of lawsuits coming down, and from what I can see, the city of Apopka ain't doing good on lawsuits right now. They kind of behind, but it seems to me to do the right thing is put this on a ballot. If people that are on this side of town in the city know that these people in South Apopka have contributed to the city of Apopka, and I just think it's unfair. It's really unfair. You got $31 million sitting in a friend bank that we can use some of this money to help annex South Apopka. And it's not them or they. It's the citizens of Apopka. Thank you.
Okay, Prince Pollard.
My name is Prince Pollard. Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner, thank you for the opportunity. I'm one of the guinea pigs from South Apopka. I've been living in South Apopka all my life. Born in Alabama. 1 year old, we moved to Apopka. And I've been in Apopka 75 years. 75 years. We bought property in South Apopka, and it was agricultural. So we get taxed because we're agricultural. But next door to me, we got a subdivision, and they price of their houses is way up there, and mine had to get up there with theirs. And man, I got a little old house. I got a little small house. I'm one of these guys, the fire truck, and they can't get to my house. They can't get to my house. They got to back down. I'm on the last two dirt roads in South Apopka. Ain't but two dirt roads left, and I live on them. There's five wells in South Apopka, and I got two of them. But then they inspect my water all the time, and they do all this good stuff. But the county can't do anything because I don't have an easement. My easement, I had to give up my easement to put a dirt road, to put pole down to the location. This is right on the backside of Lake Jewel, right next to the county city dump. I'm back up there. I'm right in that quadrant. I've still got bears walking around. I got possums and coons and coyotes. I got everything in that little old area right there. That's God's country to me. Hey, that's God's country to me. And I just wanted to let you know. And I'm on another house on Old Apopka Road, where the conflict between the city and the county about the right of way. The county, what the problem was, there used to be a railroad right of way. In the county, the city is on the other side of the railroad right of way where a walk path at. And then the city is on the other side of the road, and nobody doing anything about, the dump, the trash, and all the stuff that goes down the Old Apopka Road, because nobody got ownership. Nobody got ownership. I'm here for information. I want to be one of those guys that decide who gonna help me out the best. I want a road down to my house, but I don't have a right of way. I got 100 by 200 foot of property, and I had to give up 15 foot of that for them to put a easement to drive down to that location. But people on the other side of the road, they got to give up another 15 foot because the county won't do anything because they can't do anything because you don't have a right of way. You got to have at least 15 foot of right of way. Oh, what happened? What happened now? You got 60 by 100 instead of 100 by 200. You shut down. But I'm here for information. I want to do the right thing. I just want to let y'all know I'm one of those persons that live out there and got all these problems. And I don't want to know what y'all going to do to help me out.
Thank you, Mr. Pollard.
Sylvester Hall.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you for having this workshop. It's been a long time coming. Give you a little quick history for the ones that don't know me in the room. I retired out of the Navy in 2003. I've been a Apopka resident since 1998 in Rock Springs Ridge. My whole entire Apopka life has been over here at Rock Springs Ridge. Getting out of the military, coming to Apopka, South Apopka. I remember this is over a decade ago, attending a meeting. I was South Apopka Safe Neighborhood Vice President. Mr. Rogers was the president. And I'm getting out of the military kind of sheltered. When I left to join the Navy, neighborhoods were a little different. We had little fist fights, but we all survived for another day, and we all was having fun the next day. I was in a Minister Alliance meeting, and it troubled me that South Apopka was in the condition that it was in. And I asked the ministers, I said, how can y'all let the area look like this for decade after decades? And I think it was Pastor Warren, he said, you should have seen it some years ago. Well, to me, it was troubling because I was seeing it now. And so I'm going to take the words of Nelson Mandela. Poverty is man-made. It's not by accident, it's man-made. And so what I would like to see, another workshop. I would like to see another workshop that see why South Apopka is in the condition that it's in. Let's have a fact-based checking. Let's bring out all the figures. Let's bring out what happened back in the 20s and the 30s. Because South Apopka just didn't get like that. It was man-made. Mr. Connell did a very interesting piece about South Apopka. He went back to the years of the KKK. He went back to the years of racism. But I had a big disagreement when I started reading. He said, well, we just want to point out some things, but we don't want to point blame at none of the residents or point blame at none of the city official or the government. That's the problem. Nobody wants accountability. In order to move forward, you got to admit there was a problem. And we got to come to terms what was wrong and what went wrong and ask for forgiveness. Because for me, if you really look at everything, the city of Apopka should be apologizing to the residents over in South Apopka the way they've been treated. They should be apologizing. So I would ask, when you look at how he goes back and he talk about the KKK, he talk about the government. The government strategically put South Apopka in the position they're in. So if we can have another workshop, let's have a fact-based workshopping on the making of South Apopka, how it came about. Because some of the people back then was in the KKK are still some of them sitting in this room as we speak now. And so like in my last presentation, I asked, do laws change moral conscience? No, they don't. Only your heart, only God do. And it's time for us to do some soul searching and look at how we want to move forward as a people. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, as Martin Luther King said. Light cannot drive out, only light can. Hate can't drive out hate. Only love can. Isn't it about time we start coming together as one? Isn't it about time we start coming together as a community as one and give love a chance? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, mayor and council personnel. I was born on 13th Street in what was known then as Dolly Quarters. If anything that can happen at this point, the stigma, the words or the two words South Apopka. I do not live in South Apopka. I live in Apopka. And whoever coined the term that has been forever now used to define the neighborhood of where I continuously live, I just don't like that term, South Apopka. Because I've asked the question numerous times, how do you define South Apopka? I think we missed out in 1984 when annexing unincorporated Apopka when it was defeated at the polls in 1984. And that happened because the city of Orlando was in process of consolidating unincorporated Orange County, which would have included Apopka. So fast forward, well, Apopka did not want to lose its identity, so they came up with the annexation plan. Real estate moguls like L.T. Hunt, Mr. Clumby, Mr. McCormick, these were real estate moguls. Most of the housing that is in the unincorporated area was a result of nursery owners, farm owners providing housing. The area, unincorporated Apopka, has suffered neglect for over a century. People built houses, they moved houses from Navy bases and the turpentine businesses when they closed. Most of the housing that you see in the community was moved to that location. So, I get sick and tired of people laughing at the conditions of the area or talking about the conditions of the area, but people made away with what they had. Mr. Hunt, L.T. Hunt, the Oak Lawn subdivision, phase 1, phase 2, Mr. Hunt walked off that property by the foot. He gave Black people an opportunity to own most of the land that you have there. And wherever he dropped his cigarette duck or spit out his water tobacco, that was the property line. So that explains a lot of those dirt roads back out in the middle of nowhere. If annexation was on the ballot today, and I thank the staff for sharing all the statistics, but if annexation was on the ballot today, I would vote no, because I love my community. I have the benefits of sewer and city water in the Lake Opal subdivision that happened some years ago. Thank you, staff, for all that you presented tonight. I'm going to go home and read a little bit more, but here we are.
Thank you. Okay. Is that it? Anybody else want to speak? Come on down. And Commissioner Moore, are you going to want to? Yeah. Okay.
Rod Olson, 3156 Rolling Hills Lane here in Apopka. First off, we want to thank you for bringing this all together. And in the end, it's all about what do the people want and what do the people need. And we need to keep our focus on that. More meetings structure, the ideas kicked around were great. One of the biggest things the budget portion pointed out to me is the lack of infrastructure, not only for the new development, but the current vacancies we have. And if you can look online to see the vacancies in the city, we need to pause development until we get our feet underneath ourselves. Have enough police, have enough fire. Anyone drive around any roads in Apopka, my gosh, it's horrible, the potholes. It's not the way to live. I come from up north. Up north, we have the freezing and thawing, which causes road problems. You don't have that here. But the roads are in horrible shape. I'm not going to dive into schools at this point. You'll be hearing more about that down the road. But the schools are not collecting the information that can help make the case with the state in order to have schools built so we don't have overcrowding. Wonderful, the county has gone from 2,000 to 500 portables. But even the new school that we have here in Apopka, they've got a slot for 12 portables. For the first time in 16 years, they're going to pull 41 of the 42 portables off the Wolf Lake campus, and that's only because they opened Kelly Park. We need to get our feet underneath us. We keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. It's described as insanity. Or in my business, I learned if you always do what you always done, you always get what you always got. Thank you.
Okay. Come on, Roger. Are you, Commissioner Moore, come on. Okay, all right.
I didn't fill out a card, so Commissioner Christine Moore.
We know you are.
You want me? I listened to that all morning. It's been my honor to serve the residents of South Apopka, and I'm sure the Orange County Commission would certainly agree with that. And a little bit of history in 1990, I know it was then Chairman Chapin who, because I've spoken to her about this, that went down to South Apopka and made sure that all those streets got paved. And I know they were all paved when I first came in. in 2018-19. And we also immediately did a study, an assessment looking at sidewalks, streetlights, and what have you. And so we've been working steadily. I'd have to say, Edward, you've done a better job with Duke than I have, but we've been working on it steadily. You've done a great job on your street lighting, to get streetlights there. We've had numerous efforts on the trail to try to get that cleaned up, and I'll be looking to offer some sort of a bike ride event next year on the West Orange Trail. One of the other things I did, and Mayor Bell told me to mention it, we took the signs down that said South Apopka because it was very controversial and the signs did not look good. There was not an agreement on what to say, so I just I had them taken down. So there, you wouldn't find anything from us that says South Apopka anymore at the county. If we are going to go into some sort of a facilitated workshop to get people's opinion, I think you would want to give the county a chance to make sure that the facts, that we agree on the facts. There's some things up there that I would like my staff to check. I appreciate when you did go to the county, but there's a few things that I think both bodies should agree and would agree on the presentation so that it would be fair and objective. And I think the issue is, what do the people want to do? It's certainly been my honor to serve, and I know it's the county's honor to serve. We're glad to do that, glad to pour extra money in there that might come from the iDrive area or whatever to try to meet the needs. And so whatever the committee decides, that'll be fine. I understand the process you're setting up. Let's just make sure that the facts and the contracts and everything would be mutually agreeable to both parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Roger.
Roger Zebek at 7 West Main Street. Well, I just want to first of all just thank you guys for having this workshop. This is something that I think has been long overdue. I know there's been a lot of discussion on how we can do different things differently moving forward. There has been some lacks from the county in regards to South Apopka, but at the end of the day, we still have to make the best decision for the citizen at the end of the day. I know money is an issue, but we also have to look at the overall quality of life of people. Orange County does great things in different areas, particularly Orange County Sheriff's Office is outstanding when it comes to having the ability to put the sources on the ground when something does happen. But there again, we have this standpoint of community policing, somewhere that you always see throughout the community, which may also temper down some of the drive-by shootings that we have had recently. So a lot of these things can possibly be avoided, which ultimately I think that's what we're looking for. I don't think residents of South Apopka are looking for a handout, first of all. I just think we're looking at showing respect because for so long it's been overlooked. And it's been able to, because you can't really point a finger at one person, right? So it gives you the ability to come here and speak to someone because you're much closer than Orange County. And it's something that I dealt with personally when I worked here. So I kind of understand what they mean when they come to the city looking for answers and things of that nature. And you have to send them to Roslyn. Well, 201 South Roslyn Road, right? Roslyn Avenue. But ultimately, I'm just thankful that we did have this discussion. Hope we can take some points, not only just analyzing South Apopka, but also analyze Apopka. Because we had a lot of things that came out that kind of opened our eyes to things that when it's doing budget season, no one really speaks to those matters. And it's kind of concerning when you hear these numbers and we're understaffed in so many areas, but yet we're paying taxes now for the best service possible right now. If we got 9,000 homes coming online, we're tremendously behind. In some areas, you got cities that don't even have that many homes. And we got that coming on the books in the next probably 36 months. So we need to look at that deeply in detail because that's a major concern for all of us involved that's here now versus annexing South Apopka, and we will put them at a disservice because then you wonder, would they come second to certain other areas? So you have to take that into mind because if you've been overlooked for so long, you have to wonder, am I going to get treated fairly when I do get into this area? So just general concerns that I see. What I do think this has been a great opportunity that we should look forward to do more and not just at one point in time in, I guess, 20 years, because there again, the interlocal agreement has been in place since 2004,
that has said that the city of Apopka and Orange County worked forth in this matter. So it's been going on almost 18 years now. So it's not something that's very new to us. It's just that we're taking the steps to go in the right direction. But I want to commend you for taking that step. So I'm just thankful that we had this discussion, that you're able to have discussions from the residents directly who's going to be impacted, because ultimately it's their say, And then to get a tax increase and not going to get better services, nobody really wants that. But also as a current citizen, want to double look at what am I getting now? And I'm here all the time bringing up something, and I got a litany of things that I want to bring forward when the time comes around. But I just thank you guys for at least having this discussion and moving the ball forward. So thank you again.
Thank you, Rogers. Hey, anybody else want to speak? No. All right, well, why don't we just kind of wrap up kind of your thoughts, and then we'll see where that leads us. Commissioner Nesta, you want to start us out?
Yeah, no, I mean, we had a lot of dialogue up here already. I appreciate everyone coming out in your comments. I know there's some pros, some against, and again, it's got to be something that I think a facilitator will definitely be advantageous to present fact-based with the county, with Apopka, with everybody involved. I think that's going to be very advantageous. And then also having us have separate conversations because we need to talk about services. We need to talk about what values we are creating. And one value we didn't talk about, and it's one I bring up a lot, it's and you can't quantify it, it's just intrinsic value. Mr. Bell kind of spoke on that, is that the residents of unincorporated Apopka are shopping here, they're spending taxes here, but they don't get to vote here. They get to send their kids here and all that, but they don't get to actually make any decisions here. So, and that's an intrinsic value. That's not a financial value. So I think that's just something to take into account. Again, it's what the residents want. Well, the voting residents. I guess it's not even the residents themselves, but the voting. That just still shocks me that that's who decides it. So, and not the actual people there. So either way, I'm excited for what we've started, and I'm excited for where we're going, and I think we should come up with, I guess, our next steps from here as well. I guess agree tonight on what we need to do from here, what we plan to do from here, whether it's setting an additional workshop, which I don't think we should do. I think we should implement a facilitator that will come in and speak to both incorporated and unincorporated Apopka, and then come back in, I don't know, February, March, and present to us. And then we can have an additional workshop or just have some type of council meeting that says, with that information, here's how we're going to move forward with X, Y, Z, or, hey, nobody seems to want this. Then we know, at least we know our marching orders from there. So that's kind of my thought, what I think we should do moving forward, but it's up to you guys.
Mr. Smith.
Well, I'm going to take a shot at this. Francine is in the room, and she's the historian, and been around a couple of days longer than I have.
Ooh, wow.
But before there was a South Apopka, as she mentioned, there was Dolly's quarters, there was Cumbie's quarters, and then there was a graveyard quarters. And I grew up in one of Mr. Cumbie's houses, and didn't have a restroom inside, had an outhouse outside. And I've never lost my identity. I still understand what it means to be in the graveyard, where we had people by the name of P. Crona, Buck, Peter O, Baby Sister, Nay Baby, Skeechy, and we were a community. And Apopka wasn't always separated. It wasn't until the ordinance that was passed that created the separation of the races of people and divided us. And there was a lawsuit brought about Dowdale against the city of Apopka because of the discrimination that was taking place. And so that was 88 years ago. And there were 6 people that was on the committee that was charged with trying to see what we could do to bring about the cohesiveness again. And there's only one of those 6 people that's alive today. And so here we are in 2022 having the same discussion about how we become one Apopka. And I often tell people it's like taxation without representation, because there's no shopping in the unincorporated part of Apopka, that individuals come to the city to spend their monies. I was one of those that worked on the muck, cut cabbage, picked cucumbers, cut pulled corn, until I was 15 years of age and was able to get a job at the nursery called Hilltop. Pull weeds, drag water hose. Turned 16, they gave me a spray gun and told you need to go spray. No kind of protective equipment. Worked in the nurseries until I was 17 and ready to go off to college. And there are people that was in my high school class that said that if I ever turn 18, I'm leaving this place and I'm not coming back. And it's because of the conditions that existed in the unincorporated part of Apopka. And those individuals, they come back now for class reunions, for homegoing services for their loved ones. And the statement that I hear most of all is that this place still looks the same. And I just firmly believe that it's time that the city annex the unincorporated part of Apopka into the city, that they deserve it. And I can remember my mama working in Muffords, and I was making more money than she was, working part-time, because I worked for Green Thumb. They paid a little bit more. But she loved this city. And it was those people that worked in those greenhouses, those nurseries, that kept the title, the foliage capital of the world, here in this city. But they're not city residents. Some of them are still struggling financially as a result of that, because of where they worked, where they were employed. And I just firmly believe that there's no dollar amount that should keep us from annexing the unincorporated parts of Apopka. And if not us, then who? And if not now, then when?
Mr. Beck. Thank you for that, Commissioner Smith.
I was gonna say, I'm glad I'm going first.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. Let me put it that way. I mean, I agree. Years from now, people are not going to judge us based off of the amount of money that we spent versus was it the right thing to do, and how did it make people feel. But to get back to the dollars and cents of it too is, again, we can't look at this as a in year, it all collapses on our head in one fiscal year. And so for us to have a conversation up here to talk about what the millage impact or millage increase would be, we're not boiling the ocean at once. We have time. And again, we should not have dollars be an obstacle to further conversation to strategize how to do this. Commissioner Moore, I completely agree. We have to get to an agreement of fact first. But once we get to the agreement of fact, let's build the plan to talk about this in a very targeted, strategic manner. Again, if we are subject to having this on the next general election, again, we're talking about time to build that runway in terms of budget. Again, to go back to my earlier point, and certainly I got feedback from residents that live on the northern section of town around this being punitive to current city taxpayers. But again, I argue the fact that what's being presented from the police department, the fire department, public services, these are all expenditures that we need as of yesterday, regardless of this annexation conversation. And the fact of the matter, the development idea is a kind of a slippery slope, right? On one hand, we need tax base to pay for some of this stuff out of the general fund. You can't get some of this tax base unless you unlock the new development that's coming in. We've had an historically depressed tax rate. I know that it gets politicized, but our tax rate has been lower than what's needed to run this city. That's just the fact of the matter. We're understaffed in the building department. So there's you can heap 9,900 units within that backlog, 2 million units within that backlog. If the funnel only allows for 500 units to go online every year, we know it's coming. We know how to plan for it. So to say that rapid growth is our problem, I don't agree with. In terms of our ability to plan, the planning part of it is what is problematic. And I'll take accountability for that, and it's something that we need to fix. But I hope that everybody up here, as well as staff, agrees with that sentiment. But I think that, again, the cost, to say that cost is going to deter it for further conversation is not something I would even explore entertaining. I just think that we have plenty of room to accommodate and plan for that. And again, I just appreciate the perspective that Commissioner Smith on this council brings to this conversation. It's very valuable. So thank you.
Commissioner Velasquez.
Okay, they saved me for last. Obviously, I don't have the footprint from Apopka's history, but I certainly have the footprint where when I came here in 2004 is when I bought my home. But when I moved here in 2005, what I found interesting was that, I would ask neighbors, well, give me a perspective. Tell me a little bit about Apopka. And I could remember some of my neighbors saying, don't cross the railroad tracks. And I didn't understand that because I came from New York City. I came from East Harlem. I came from the projects. I came from a very diverse urban area. So I didn't understand that. And I could remember for about a week, I would get up at 6 a.m. and drive to South Apopka. And because I wanted to see, why couldn't I cross the railroad tracks? And after about 2 or 3 days, I came home and I told my husband, I don't understand why we can't cross it. I said, it's a Black community. I said, but in New York City, we were not separated that way. So for me, it was kind of difficult. It was a culture change for me. And I had to understand that. And there was no one to really kind of guide me or even talk to me. So that is how I started to get involved in the politics of the city of Apopka. And of course, for many of you know, I ran my first election in 2013. And it was very difficult because I was facing a history that I was unaware of. And I could remember when I did campaign, and I did purposely go to the south side of Apopka because I wanted to understand what their needs were. And that was 2013. And I remember a newspaper article criticizing me, the local newspaper, because I didn't know the boundaries. And I was knocking on doors that were not part of the city of Apopka. And for that, they didn't want to support me because I didn't know the boundaries. But I felt that the south side of Apopka was just as important to me during the race. And it was because there was a community there that I felt was unrepresented, that was underrepresented. And it included the Black community, included the Hispanic community. But I feel that over the years, as commissioner, as a resident, that I've come to understand Apopka. I've come to understand some of the challenges that we meet as a commissioner. And I remember, and I brought this because I do remember in 2015, November 2015, and you would know that, Mr. Bell, is that we had started, a commitment, and we had created a resolution, and they asked me to be part of it. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I was the only commissioner that agreed to this. And this has been, as you can see it, I keep it on my desk in my office. And it has been my commitment since I continued to run for office that this has been important to me, because that was the one thing I keep saying when I sit up here. I matter. I matter, you matter, my vote matters. And so I'm happy that we're having this workshop today, because it was something that I had committed to years ago. So the fact that I'm here with this, I'm grateful. And this is the start. And there is a lot of, there's a lot that's got to go into it. I respect so much what Commissioner Smith brings to the table. I respect what Commissioner Nestor. I certainly respect Kyle Becker. I have been with him for most of the years. So this is something that I really feel committed to. And this is something that I'm really proud that we got to this stage today. So all I'm asking is for all the residents of the south side of Apopka, as well as the residents where I live on the north side, to give us an opportunity, to try and get this done, because it's been something that obviously is way before my time. But during my 18 years here, I am really proud right now at this moment that I finally get to give this, to say that I'm part of this and that we are moving forward with it. So thank you today for all of you that came. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll wrap this up. Got some notes, and I don't even know that I'm going to bring these up, but I think we've kind of run through everybody's mind is maybe coming up, talk about a facilitator. The question for me, and I think we can get Supervisor of Election Cowles will be happy to get us the mailing list of the voters, either in unincorporated or incorporated. My suggestion would be let's get that. Let's start with unincorporated. The only thing I'm a little concerned about is we've only have two people from unincorporated here that spoke. Maybe there's more here. And of the two, neither one of them were enthusiastic supporters of annexation. So if there are a bunch of people from unincorporated that want this, they didn't show up tonight. So let's be clear, they aren't here. Okay. Now you just said you lived in Sheila Oaks. Well, you're not. That's incorporated. So anyway, so that wasn't my point. So anyway, I think what I want to do is put together a kind of a fact sheet. But I'd have to disagree with Commissioner Becker. We have to look at this from a financial point of view. I think we have to say this is what it's going to cost, because it's going to affect people in North Apopka. I mean, we have to, are we taking money away from Parks and Rec, from road resurfacing, whatever those $2 million, let's say $2.5 million are? We have to put that on a piece of paper. We have to make that as a condition. Now, you can say we're going to reduce the services in the incorporated areas to make up that $2.5 million. That's fine, but you've got to have that number, has to be in there. That's part of the what we're here to decide. So my thought is we put together the numbers. I think we at least reach out to Bill Cowles and see what that will cost for him to do a mailing for us. And we send that to the registered voters, which are the ones that would vote if we were to do it a legitimate vote. Send it just to the unincorporated Apopkans, see what their feelings are. Because I mean, maybe I'm the only one out here, but I have not heard, I've had maybe 3 emails from unincorporated Apopkins, and 2 of them were against and 1 of them was for. So I'm not getting this groundswell of support from the people that want to be annexed. And so I think you got to make the points, if you like Apopka services, I mean, the question would be, okay, are our services better? I think they are a little bit. But why aren't the counties then equal to what our services are? Why aren't they holding the county responsible for the services they should be getting currently? So so I want to put together, I'll work with Edward and the team, and we'll put together a nice, lay it out. And listen, folks, I'm trying to be as objective about this. I mean, I could have loaded things. I didn't want to do that because I want this being objective. I want everybody to have equal, opportunities that I'm not trying to put my hand on the scale that this is what I think it will cost. Here's what the benefits would be for you. And then we move forward with a mailing to the unincorporated first, and then see what that is like. Because obviously, if we go to the incorporated, the number multiplies by 30x. Because now you're talking about, it's probably, let's say it's $1 a voter. Now you're talking, there's 30,000 voters. That's 30 grand just for incorporated. So I think Commissioner Smith, does that sound like or do you want to do both? I mean, we can do both. I just don't get the feeling, this groundswell from the unincorporated that they want to be incorporated. But I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and that we give them that opportunity.
I have no problem with the mailing to the unincorporated first, but I would like for us to see
What it looks like. Absolutely, yes.
before it goes out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
And with all due respect, Mayor, this isn't a Commissioner Smith unilateral decision. This is a council decision. So I'm not sure why you pegged that question to Commissioner Smith. But agreed. If you've totally checked out from my conversation earlier, this is what we described doing. And to represent the fact that I don't care about cost is complete disillusionment. I'm saying it shouldn't be the obstacle for us to continue down the path of exploring this further. You're trying to say that we have to do this all in year spending, and we don't. We don't have to talk about millage rate increase yet. Why would we talk about millage increase right now? You're trying to bias. You're trying to bias an audience to say it's a glide path. Funny, if this takes over 4 years of planning, our tax base is going to go up. Obviously, property values are going up, so our tax base is going to increase. There's economies of scale. We're going to need to have these police officers, fire departments, et cetera, anyways. So to say that you're not thinking about a financial strategy to attacking this, you're thinking, oh, well, we just got to raise millage increase. Well, that's a lazy approach to the financial strategy of paying for something like this. I'm saying that we don't need to sit here and squabble over dollars and cents yet. That's going to be part of the conversation. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, this isn't a council decision. This is the people that we're impacting their lives to make that decision. So to bias the population at this point is irresponsible, in my opinion. But I will not sit up here and let you try and make it sound like I don't care about finances and I'm not a good steward of our tax dollars. That's complete bogus.
All right, so we'll put something together for everybody to take a look at. And
just one quick note too. Thank you. If we can, again, I like the facilitator model, so I'm okay with the mailer. It's just I think having that direct dialogue too, and again, to whoever's point, it's just there is a cost to it, of course, and that does need to be factored in. I just think there's certain times if the residents of unincorporated Apopka don't want to be annexed, the cost is irrelevant. So to whoever's point, I'd rather figure out, do they want to? Is that even a want? If it is, great. Then let's address the cost, things like that, and go from there. So,
but I think you've got to have finances in that whatever we send out, because if it's free and you get better services, absolutely, who wouldn't be for that? So if you don't put some kind of a financial number to it, why wouldn't you be for it?
Well, so I slightly disagree, only in that we've gotten the same emails, and they've said we haven't even sent them the cost of anything, and they've said no.
Right.
So to kind of rebut your point, the cost is irrelevant to them because, and I don't mean them as a derogatory, them unincorporated.
Right.
Is that, and especially the people that have emailed us, the cost is irrelevant to them. It's specifically, they don't want to because they to Mrs. Boykin, she the pride in that community, we're good, is what I've gotten a lot of emails about. I've gotten alternative as well. So that's where I understand what you're saying about the cost, but to rebut that again, our emails have not included any cost. They've said we're good. Those specific emails. So all I'm asking is see that side as well, that I do see what you're saying. Cost is important. That our service is going to get better, yes or no? I mean, that is a huge benefit. But many people are saying we're good regardless of the cost, regardless of the services. We've created this incredible community. Don't screw it up.
Right.
So, and then others feel otherwise. So I just think having a facilitator come in first, speak to that community in different venues, because some people may not be comfortable coming to City Hall. Some people may not have our contact information, things like that. So that's where I'm thinking, meet people where they're at, and they're going to be more comfortable to give some dialogue. So that would be my request, more than reaching out to Cowles and getting an email list or a mail list, is to just reach out and start kind of creating, dates of, hey, let's meet at this spot at this time. So
Right. Well,
that's
I
just my ask.
I think the Bridges Center is the perfect spot. I mean,
Mhm.
that's right in the heart of where we're talking about annexation. So I'm sure we can work with our commissioner and get us a spot down there in the evening. So anyway, all right. With that, I appreciate everybody coming out tonight.